Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, it was in the pocket of a coat I'd never worn. Not my style, not my color, but it was hanging in my closet like it belonged. The key was thick, heavy, with no markings, just a faint, greasy residue on the handle. I tried every door, drawer, and cabinet I could find. Nothing fit. When I tried to throw it away, it ended up back on my nightstand. Then things started going missing. One shoe, one glove, a single photograph torn in half. I started locking my door, but that didn't stop it. One night I woke up with dirt under my fingernails and the key clutched in my palm. Now I'm starting to remember a room I've never seen, a door I've never opened, and someone waiting behind it. The coat smelled like stale cigarettes and something else I couldn't place, something organic, earthy. I hung it back in the closet, but the smell lingered on my fingers. I washed my hands 3 times before the scent faded. The missing items bothered me more than they should have. A left sneaker from my running pair, the right glove from my winter set, half of a photograph from my college graduation, torn right down the middle, separating me from my roommate. The edges were clean, deliberate. Someone had used scissors. I started keeping an inventory. Every evening I'd walk through my apartment, checking that everything was where it belonged. The ritual became obsessive. I'd count my books, my dishes, my clothes. When I found gaps, I'd write them down in a notebook I kept by the door. The key sat on my nightstand like an accusation. I'd moved it to the kitchen drawer, then to a box under my bed. Each morning, it returned to the same spot beside my lamp. The metal was warm when I picked it up, as if someone had been holding it. I decided to investigate the coat. No tags, no labels, but the fabric felt expensive. The stitching was precise, machine-made, but high quality. In the other pocket, I found a receipt, faded and crumpled. The store name was illegible, but I could make out part of a date and an address across town. The building was a dry cleaner's, tucked between a pharmacy and a used bookstore. The owner was an elderly woman with careful eyes. When I showed her the receipt, her expression shifted. She disappeared into the back room and returned with a ledger, thick and worn. Her finger traced down columns of handwritten entries until she stopped. This coat was dropped off for cleaning but never picked up. The customer paid in advance, left no contact information. She looked up at me. That was over a year ago. I asked who had brought it in. She shook her head. I don't remember faces that well anymore, but I remember this one because of what happened after. The woman leaned closer, her voice dropping. Someone came looking for it, not the original customer, someone else. They seemed angry when I said it had been donated to charity. They left their number, said to call if anyone came asking about it. My stomach tightened. Do you still have the number? She pulled out a small piece of paper from beneath the register. The handwriting was sharp, aggressive. I recognized the area code, but not the number. I called from a payphone outside the cleaners. The voice that answered was flat, professional. When I mentioned the coat, there was a long pause. Where did you find it? I explained about the charity donation, about finding it in my closet. The person on the other end was quiet for so long I thought they'd hung up. Oh, we needed to meet. They suggested a coffee shop downtown. No names were exchanged, but they described what they'd be wearing. A blue shirt, black jacket. They'd be sitting by the window. I arrived early and watched from across the street. The person who matched the description was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with nervous hands that couldn't stay still. They kept checking their phone, glancing at the door. Inside, they studied my face before nodding toward the empty chair. "You really found it in your closet." I explained everything: the key, the missing items, the strange dreams. They listened without interrupting, their expression growing darker. "The person who owned that coat is dead." The words hit like cold water. I gripped my coffee cup to steady my hands. "It wasn't natural causes. The case is still open, but the police aren't actively investigating anymore. Not enough evidence." They leaned forward, "But I know what happened." They claimed to be a private investigator hired by the victim's family. The coat had been taken from the scene, along with other personal effects. Someone had claimed it, disposed of the evidence, tried to make it disappear. "The key you found opens a storage unit. We've been looking for it." I pulled the key from my pocket and set it on the table. Under the fluorescent lights, it looked different, more sinister. The investigator reached for it, but I pulled my hand back. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" They showed me a photograph, a young person smiling at the camera, wearing the same coat I'd found in my closet. The background showed a familiar street, a building I recognized from my neighborhood. "They lived 2 blocks from you. The coat was supposed to be destroyed, but someone got sloppy. It ended up in a donation bin, and somehow you got it." The storage unit was in an industrial area outside town. The investigator drove while I sat in the passenger seat, the key heavy in my palm. The facility was mostly empty, rows of orange doors stretching into the distance. Unit 47 was in the back corner. The key slid in smoothly, and the lock clicked open with a sound that felt final. Inside were boxes, neatly labeled and stacked. Personal belongings, documents, photographs, but also other things. Items that didn't belong to one person. Jewelry, wallets, phones, all of it cataloged with dates and locations. The investigator was quiet as we examined the contents. "This isn't just about one victim." I found a notebook at the bottom of the largest box. Pages of handwritten entries, names and addresses, detailed observations. The handwriting was careful, methodical. Each entry described someone's daily routine, their habits, their vulnerabilities. My address was on the last page. The investigator saw it at the same time I did. We looked at each other, understanding passing between us without words. "We need to call the police," they said. But I was thinking about something else, about how the coat had appeared in my closet, about the missing items, about waking up with dirt under my fingernails. "What if," I said slowly, "what if I didn't just find the coat? What if I put it there?" The investigator stared at me. "What are you saying?" I thought about the gaps in my memory, the dreams that felt too real, the way the key always returned to my nightstand. What if I'm not the victim here? What if I'm the one you're looking for? The silence stretched between us. In the distance, I could hear traffic, the sound of normal life continuing while we stood surrounded by evidence of something terrible. The investigator's hand moved slowly toward their phone. "I think we should go back to town, talk to someone." But I was already backing toward the storage unit door. The key was in my hand, and for the first time since I'd found it, everything made perfect sense. I ran. Now I'm back in my apartment, writing this down before I forget again. The coat is still hanging in my closet. The key is on my nightstand, and I'm starting to remember other things, other faces, other nights when I woke up with dirt under my fingernails. The investigator will come looking for me soon, or maybe the police, but I keep thinking about that notebook, about how neat the handwriting was, how organized, how familiar. I've been checking my inventory again, counting my belongings, but now I'm not looking for what's missing. I'm looking for what doesn't belong, and I'm finding more than I want to. Crime 2, I was brushing my teeth when I noticed something strange in the mirror. My reflection blinked before I did, subtle but enough to freeze me in place. Then it started doing things I wasn't doing, wiping blood off its hands, backing away from a broken chair, holding a knife I didn't have. It felt like watching a movie, until I looked down and saw red on my own hands. I don't remember doing anything violent, but the reflection kept repeating the same motion: stab, twist, wipe. Over and over. Now I've started blacking out, only for minutes, but I wake up sweaty, shaking, and sore. The last time I found an earring in my bed, I live alone. The earring was silver, shaped like a teardrop, delicate, the kind someone would notice missing. I held it against the bathroom light, watching it catch the fluorescent glow. The metal was warm, as if it had been worn recently. I set it on my nightstand and tried to convince myself it belonged to a previous tenant, somehow wedged between the mattress and the wall for months. But deep down, I knew better. The blackouts had started 3 weeks earlier. Brief episodes where consciousness would slip away like water through cupped hands. I would be washing dishes, then suddenly find myself standing in the hallway, disoriented, with soap still on my fingers. Or reading a book, only to discover I had turned 20 pages without remembering a single word. My doctor suggested stress. Work had been demanding and I had been sleeping poorly. She prescribed mild sedatives and recommended meditation. I wanted to believe her clinical explanation, but the mirror incident changed everything. Now I was afraid to look at my own reflection. I started keeping a journal, documenting each episode. The pattern was disturbing. The blackouts always occurred during routine activities: cooking, cleaning, getting ready for bed, never while driving or at work. Always at home, where I was alone with my thoughts and that damned mirror. The first breakthrough came when I installed a security camera in my bedroom. The footage revealed something that made my blood run cold. During my blackouts, I wasn't just standing still or wandering aimlessly. I was active, purposeful, methodical, but the person on the screen didn't move like me. The gestures were different, more aggressive, more calculated. In one recording, I watched myself carefully examine the earring, turning it over in my hands before placing it under my pillow. But I had no memory of that action. In another, I saw myself writing in a notebook I didn't recognize, using handwriting that looked similar to mine but somehow foreign. The pen strokes were sharper, more violent. I searched my apartment for the mysterious notebook, but never found it. The investigation took a darker turn when I discovered scratches on my arms that I couldn't explain. They were precise, deliberate, forming a pattern that looked almost like letters. Under a magnifying glass, I could make out what appeared to be initials. I began researching missing persons cases, focusing on women with those initials. The internet revealed dozens of cases, but one caught my attention. A woman who had disappeared from her apartment 6 months earlier. The police report mentioned that her earrings were missing from her jewelry box, silver teardrops. The building where she lived was only 4 blocks from my apartment. I started walking past her former address during my lunch breaks. The building was similar to mine, old brick construction, narrow hallways, thin walls. The kind of place where sounds carry between units, where someone could hear their neighbor's footsteps at all hours, where privacy was an illusion. The current tenant was a middle-aged man who worked night shifts. Through careful observation, I learned his schedule. He left for work every evening at sunset and returned before dawn. His apartment would be empty during the hours when my blackouts typically occurred. But I couldn't understand how I would have access to his unit. I had never met him, never spoken to him, never even seen him clearly. Yet something about his building felt familiar, as if I had walked those halls before, climbed those stairs, stood outside that particular door. The breakthrough came when I found a key in my jacket pocket, a key I didn't recognize attached to a keychain shaped like a small skull. The metal was worn smooth, suggesting frequent use. When I held it up to the light, I could see faint scratches along the edges, as if it had been copied multiple times. That night I set up additional cameras throughout my apartment and waited. The blackout came just after midnight. When I reviewed the footage the next morning, I watched myself get dressed in dark clothes, pocket the mysterious key, and leave my apartment with the purposeful stride of someone who knew exactly where they were going. The timestamp showed I was gone for exactly 97 minutes. I spent the following week trying to retrace those missing steps. Each evening I would walk the route to her former building, testing the key on various doors. It didn't fit the main entrance, but when I tried the basement access, the lock turned smoothly. Inside, I found a storage area filled with abandoned belongings from former tenants. Among the dusty boxes and forgotten furniture, I discovered a collection of personal items that didn't belong to me. Women's jewelry, clothing, photographs, all organized with the same methodical precision I had observed in my blackout footage. Each item was labeled with initials and dates, creating a catalog of missing things from missing people. The silver teardrop earring was there, along with its matching pair. But the most disturbing discovery was a mirror propped against the far wall. When I looked into it, my reflection appeared normal. But when I moved closer, I could see something else reflected behind me, a figure standing in the shadows, watching. When I turned around, nothing was there. But in the mirror, the figure remained, copying my movements with a slight delay. Just like that morning in my bathroom. I realized then that the mirror wasn't showing me someone else's crime. It was showing me my own. The person I became during those blackouts wasn't a stranger. It was a part of me that I had buried so deeply that my conscious mind couldn't access those memories. But mirrors don't lie. They reflect truth, even when we're not ready to see it. The evidence suggested that I had been visiting this basement for months, collecting trophies from women who would never be found. Women whose disappearances would remain unsolved because the person responsible couldn't even remember committing the crimes. I should have called the police immediately. I should have turned myself in, explained about the blackouts, the missing time, the evidence I had discovered. But instead, I carefully returned everything to its original position and locked the basement door behind me. Because admitting what I had found would mean accepting what I had become. Now I avoid mirrors whenever possible. I've covered every reflective surface in my apartment with sheets or turned them toward the wall. But sometimes, in store windows or car mirrors, I catch glimpses of that other person. The one who knows things I don't remember learning, who has been places I never intended to go. The blackouts continue, but now I understand their purpose. They're not random episodes of lost time. They're scheduled appointments with a version of myself that I'm not allowed to meet. A version that leaves earrings under my pillow as reminders of work I don't remember doing. The police are still investigating those missing women. They release updates periodically, asking for tips, offering rewards for information. They describe the cases as cold, unsolvable mysteries, but I know the solution is closer than anyone realizes. Sometimes I wonder if I should leave town, start over somewhere else, but I suspect that other person would follow me. After all, we share the same reflection, and mirrors are everywhere. Crime 3, I picked it up at a cheap lot outside the city. Nothing special, compact, low mileage, smelled like air freshener and regret. Halfway through the drive, I dropped my phone between the seats. When I reached down, my fingers hit something sticky. I pulled back and saw it, dried blood, thick and caked. I pulled the seats up and found more, and a bracelet, and a torn piece of a shirt. I called the rental company. They denied everything. I tried turning it in early, but they said I hadn't rented anything. The contract was gone. Now I can't prove I didn't put that blood there. The bracelet was silver, tarnished around the edges. Small charm attached, a heart with initials engraved so deep they felt like scars under my thumb. The fabric was cotton, navy blue, with what looked like fingernail scratches along the torn edge. I held both items in my hands, feeling their weight like evidence I never wanted to find. The rental lot sat empty when I drove back. Chain-link fence rattled in the wind, gate hanging open like a mouth. The office windows were dark, but I could see papers scattered across the desk inside. I pressed my face against the glass and made out rental agreements, keys hanging on hooks, everything looking exactly as it should, except there was no record of me. I called the number on the business card I'd kept in my wallet. The voice that answered sounded different from the man who'd handed me the keys. Older, tired. "Never seen you before," he said when I described myself. "Been running this place for 15 years. I know every customer." The blood under my fingernails had dried to a rust-colored film. I'd scrubbed my hands raw, but traces remained in the creases of my palms. The metallic smell lingered no matter how much soap I used. I found myself checking my hands constantly, looking for stains that might have appeared without my notice. Back home, I spread the evidence across my kitchen table. The bracelet caught the overhead light, throwing small reflections across the wall. The fabric piece lay flat, revealing more details I hadn't noticed before. Tiny threads pulled loose, as if someone had grabbed it desperately. Dark spots peppered one corner, could be blood, could be anything. I searched online for missing persons reports, scrolling through faces that blurred together after a while. Young women, older women, teenagers who disappeared without trace. None of them matched the initials on the bracelet, but then again, jewelry can be borrowed, stolen, inherited. The heart could have belonged to anyone. The car still sat in my driveway. I'd been avoiding it, using ride shares to get around, but the insurance payments were mounting. Every morning I'd look out my window and see it there, ordinary and silent. The blood was gone now. I'd spent hours with cleaning supplies and steam, scrubbing until my knuckles split. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something remained, invisible but present. I started having conversations with neighbors, casual mentions of the rental car, watching their faces for reactions. Most showed polite disinterest, but the woman from 2 houses down paused when I described the vehicle. "Funny thing," she said, adjusting her garden gloves. "I could swear I saw that same car parked here weeks ago. Middle of the night, thought maybe you had company." The timing didn't match. I'd only rented the car recently, or at least I thought I had. But memory can be unreliable, especially when you're questioning everything else. I drove to the police station, evidence bag containing the bracelet and fabric clutched in my sweaty palm. The desk sergeant listened to my story with the patience of someone who'd heard stranger tales. He took my information, promised someone would call, but his eyes suggested this was routine paperwork destined for a forgotten file. Days passed without contact. I called twice, left messages, was told the case had been assigned, but no detective was available to speak with me. The evidence bag disappeared into a system I couldn't navigate, taking with it my only proof that something terrible had happened in that car. Sleep became elusive. I'd lie awake wondering about the previous renter, about what had occurred in those seats, about whether the blood belonged to someone who was still missing or someone who would never be found. The rental company's denial felt like more than mere bureaucratic confusion. It felt deliberate, calculated. I returned to the lot one final time, parking across the street to watch. The same man who denied knowing me was helping other customers, normal people renting normal cars for normal purposes. But when he looked in my direction, his expression changed. Not surprise or confusion, but recognition mixed with something else, something that looked almost like guilt. The car payments continue arriving each month. Insurance, registration, all the paperwork of ownership for a vehicle I never legally rented. My bank statements show the charges, my credit card bears the transactions, but the rental company insists none of it happened. I'm trapped in a financial obligation to a crime scene I can't return and can't escape. Sometimes I catch myself checking the seats again, running my hands along the upholstery, searching for traces I know I cleaned away. The smell of air freshener has faded, replaced by something I can't identify, not unpleasant exactly, but wrong somehow, like flowers left too long in stagnant water. The initials from the bracelet have worn a groove in my memory. I trace them with my finger when I'm thinking, feeling the phantom weight of evidence I can no longer touch. 2 letters that might spell out someone's love, someone's identity, someone's last connection to a world that forgot them. And in quiet moments when doubt creeps in like fog, I wonder if the blood was always there, if the bracelet was mine all along, if the memory of renting that car is as real as the memory of finding what was hidden beneath its seats. Because the mind can play tricks, especially when it's desperate to make sense of senseless things. The car sits in my driveway still, ordinary and patient, keeping whatever secrets remain locked in its upholstery and frame. I drive it because I have to, because the alternative is admitting that nothing I remember can be trusted. But every journey feels like returning to a scene I was never meant to discover, carrying evidence of a crime that may have happened to someone who may never have existed at all. Crime 4, I found the recorder at a thrift shop, wedged under a pile of old chargers and tangled headphones. I hit play just out of curiosity. The voice was clear, trembling, confessing to a crime in vivid, horrific detail. It wasn't just murder, it was staged, calculated, and deeply personal. I kept listening, and halfway through I realized I recognized the voice, not just familiar. It was the one I hear when I talk in my sleep. I've been recording myself for years to catch my insomnia habits. I played back old clips. It matched, word for word. I'd never heard this story before, but apparently I'd already told it. The confession began with a description of a kitchen. White tiles, the kind that show every fingerprint, every drop of water. The voice described how the light reflected off the surface, creating small rainbows when the sun hit just right. I could smell the bleach through the words, sharp and chemical, masking something underneath, something organic and wrong. I rewound the tape, listened again. The voice spoke about watching someone prepare breakfast, the methodical way they arranged everything. Coffee brewing, eggs cracking, the soft scrape of butter across toast. Normal sounds that should have been comforting. Instead, they felt like a countdown. My hands shook as I compared the recording to my own sleep tapes. The cadence was identical. The slight rasp when certain words caught in the throat. Even the way the voice paused, as if choosing each word carefully. It was me, but it wasn't me. I had no memory of speaking these words, of knowing these details. The confession continued with surgical precision. The victim trusted the killer completely. They shared morning routines, inside jokes, the kind of intimate knowledge that only comes from living closely with someone. The killer described waiting until the victim turned away, reaching for something in the upper cabinet. The moment of vulnerability was brief but sufficient. I found myself walking to my own kitchen, standing in the exact position described. My counter was different, older, but the angle was the same. The way the light fell across the surface matched the recording's description. I opened the cabinet where I keep the cleaning supplies. The bleach bottle was there, half empty. I couldn't remember using it recently. The voice on the tape explained the cleanup process with disturbing expertise, which chemicals neutralize which evidence, how long it takes for certain substances to break down, the precise temperature required for complete dissolution, information I didn't know I possessed. I checked my internet history, nothing, no searches for forensic procedures or chemical reactions, no true crime documentaries or investigative articles. The knowledge seemed to come from somewhere else entirely, some hidden corner of my mind that I couldn't access while awake. The confession moved to the disposal phase. The killer spoke about a storage unit, one of those anonymous facilities where people keep things they can't bear to throw away but don't want in their homes. The voice described the route there, the specific turns and landmarks, not addresses, but the kind of visceral directions that come from repeated travel. I drove the route described in the tape without conscious decision. My hands seemed to know where to turn, which exit to take. The storage facility was exactly where the voice said it would be, Unit 47. The lock was a combination type, and somehow I knew it would be my birthday backwards. Inside I found cleaning supplies, industrial-grade chemicals still in their original packaging. A receipt showed they'd been purchased on a date I couldn't specifically remember, but the handwriting was unmistakably mine. The ink was still relatively fresh, maybe a few weeks old. The confession tape had more to reveal. The killer spoke about a second location, a basement that smelled like damp concrete and old metal. The voice described the sound of water dripping, the way footsteps echoed differently in that space. There was something buried there, wrapped in plastic and weighted down with concrete blocks. I knew that basement. It belonged to a house I'd looked at buying but decided against. The realtor had mentioned the previous owner left town suddenly, abandoning the property. The price was too good to pass up for someone else. I'd walked through it once, noting the strange odor and the way the basement felt colder than the rest of the house. The key was still in my pocket. I'd kept it after the showing, intending to return it, but somehow never did. The realtor had forgotten about it, or maybe assumed I'd lost it. The house stood empty, waiting. In the basement, I found disturbed earth exactly where the voice had indicated. The dirt was looser than the surrounding area, as if it had been dug up and refilled recently. I hadn't brought a shovel, but there was one leaning against the wall, still dirty from use. The tape continued playing in my head even when I wasn't listening to it. The voice described feelings of detachment, of watching the crime unfold from outside one's own body. It spoke about the victim's final moments, the look of confusion and betrayal. The killer felt nothing in the moment, only a strange sense of completion. I began to remember fragments, conversations that felt like dreams, plans that seemed like fantasies. The boundary between sleep and waking became unclear. I'd been having episodes where I'd find myself in unfamiliar places, holding objects I didn't remember picking up. My doctor called it stress-related dissociation, nothing to worry about. The confession ended with a statement that chilled me more than any other detail. The killer claimed to have no memory of the crime while awake. They only knew about it through these recordings, messages from a version of themselves they couldn't access. The voice wondered if this was justice or just another form of torture. I compared the dates on my sleep recordings with local missing person reports. There were matches, patterns I hadn't noticed before. People who disappeared during periods when my insomnia was at its worst, when I'd started taking stronger medications to force sleep. The final tape was different. Instead of confession, it was instruction. The voice explained how to dispose of the evidence, how to clean the storage unit, how to make everything disappear. It spoke directly to me as if it knew I would be listening. It used my name, though I'd never spoken it aloud during sleep recordings. I found myself following the instructions without conscious choice, driving to the storage unit, clearing it out, wiping down surfaces. The movements felt automatic, like muscle memory from something I'd done before. The industrial chemicals went down storm drains. The receipts were burned. The basement was filled with fresh concrete, mixed according to specifications I somehow knew by heart. But the recordings remain. I've hidden them where I can't find them while awake, but I know they're there. Sometimes I wake up to find new ones, conversations with a version of myself that knows things I don't, that remembers things I've forgotten. The voice on the tapes claims innocence. It says it was protecting me, cleaning up messes I'd made without knowing. It speaks of a partnership, a necessary division of labor between the self that acts and the self that remembers. Neither can exist without the other. I've stopped sleeping. The recordings continue anyway. The voice finds other ways to speak, other times when my consciousness fades. It leaves notes now, detailed instructions for tasks I don't remember agreeing to perform. The handwriting is mine, but the words belong to someone else. The confession tape that started everything is gone. I searched every inch of my home, every possible hiding place, but I can still hear it, playing in the background of my thoughts. The voice that sounds like mine but isn't, describing crimes I didn't commit but somehow know intimately. I've considered turning myself in, but for what? I have no memory of any actual crimes, only these recordings that could be elaborate fabrications. The police would need evidence, bodies, proof that anything described in the tapes actually happened. All I have are the words of a voice that might not even be real. The missing person cases remain unsolved. The families still search for answers. And somewhere in the space between sleeping and waking, between memory and forgetting, the voice continues its work, planning, confessing, instructing, waiting for me to understand that we were never two separate people. We were always one. Crime 5, they came in an unmarked envelope, 8 glossy prints. The first few were of my living room, then my kitchen, then my bedroom. I was in none of them, but the angles they weren't from the windows. They were taken from inside, behind furniture, near the ceiling. One was from inside a closet I never use. I checked every inch of the house, found nothing. The locks were untouched, but every night since, I've woken up to the sound of something shifting just outside the bedroom. And yesterday I found a 9th photo, me sleeping. The envelope had arrived on a Tuesday. I remember because I'd been expecting a delivery from the insurance company, documents about the break-in from last month. When I found it wedged between my screen door and the frame, unmarked and manila-colored, I assumed it was just another bureaucratic mistake. The kind of mix-up that happens when you live in a neighborhood where houses look identical and mailboxes blur together. But photographs don't lie about geometry. The living room shot showed my couch from an angle that would require standing behind the television, pressed against the wall where I keep my grandmother's china cabinet. I measured the distance that evening, holding my phone up to match the perspective. The camera had to be positioned exactly where no person could stand without moving heavy furniture. The kitchen photograph disturbed me more. It captured the breakfast nook where I sit every morning, but from above and to the left, as if someone had been suspended near the corner where the ceiling meets the wall. I'd painted that corner myself just 2 years ago. There were no holes, no mounting brackets, no signs anything had ever been attached there. The paint was smooth and undisturbed. Sleep became fragmented after that. I'd wake to what sounded like footsteps in the hallway, but when I turned on the lights, nothing. The hardwood floors that had seemed charming when I bought the house now amplified every settling noise, every expansion and contraction of old timber. During the day, I told myself it was paranoia. At night, lying in the dark, I wasn't so sure. The bedroom photograph showed my dresser, my unmade bed, the pile of laundry I'd been meaning to fold. But it was taken from inside my walk-in closet through the partially open door. I keep that door closed, always. The humidity from the bathroom affects my clothes, so I'm religious about keeping it shut. Yet there it was, captured from behind my hanging dresses, the camera positioned where I store my winter boots. I started checking the closet obsessively. Every morning before work, every evening when I returned home. I moved every shoe box, every storage container, running my hands along the walls and sighing. Nothing, but the musty smell had changed. Instead of the usual combination of cedar and fabric softener, there was something else. Something organic and warm, like someone had been breathing in that small space for extended periods. The 7th photograph was the most technically impossible. It showed my entire kitchen from corner to corner, but from a vantage point that would require the camera to be embedded inside the refrigerator, shooting through the door. I opened every drawer, every cabinet, dismantled the spice rack, pulled out the stove. The walls were solid. The angles didn't add up to any reasonable explanation. My neighbor, an elderly woman who spends most of her day watching the street from her front window, mentioned seeing a utility van parked outside my house last month. She couldn't remember the company name, just that it was white and had been there for several hours while I was at work. When I called the electric company, the gas company, the cable provider, none of them had any record of service calls to my address. The police were polite but ultimately useless. They took statements, dusted the envelope for fingerprints, made note of the serial numbers on the photographs, but without evidence of forced entry or actual theft, there wasn't much they could do. The detective, a soft-spoken woman with tired eyes, suggested I change my locks and install a security system. She also mentioned that photograph development had become increasingly rare, which might help narrow down where they were processed. I visited every photo lab within a 50-mile radius. Most had closed down years ago, replaced by digital printing kiosks in pharmacy chains. The few remaining shops were run by older men who treated film development like a dying art form. None recognized the photographs, but one mentioned that the paper stock looked expensive, professional grade, the kind used by serious photographers or investigators. That's when I started thinking about the break-in from last month. Nothing had been stolen, which had puzzled me at the time. The back door lock had been picked cleanly, professionally, but the house looked untouched. I'd assumed it was interrupted, that whoever had broken in had fled when they heard something. But what if they hadn't been there to steal anything? What if they'd been there to install something? The 9th photograph arrived exactly 1 week after the first envelope. Same manila paper, same unmarked exterior. This time there was only one image. Me lying in bed, photographed from the foot of the bed looking toward the headboard. The angle suggested the camera had been positioned on my dresser, but my dresser was covered with personal items, jewelry box, lamp, books that would have made such a shot impossible. In the photograph, I was clearly asleep, wearing the same blue pajamas I'd worn every night that week. but it was my face that made my hands shake as I held the print. Even in sleep, my expression looked troubled, almost fearful, as if some part of my subconscious knew it was being watched. I stopped sleeping in my bedroom that night. The couch became my refuge, positioned so I could see all the room's entry points, but sleep brought no peace. I'd drift off only to wake with the sensation that someone had been standing over me, studying me, documenting me in ways I couldn't understand or prevent. The house feels different now, smaller, as if the walls have been compromised in ways I can't measure or fix. I've changed the locks 3 times, installed cameras in every room, even hired a private investigator to sweep for listening devices. Everything comes back clean, normal, untampered with. But normal doesn't explain the photographs. Normal doesn't account for images taken from physically impossible positions inside a house where I live alone, where I've lived alone for 3 years, where every corner and hiding place should be familiar to me. Sometimes I wonder if the answer isn't about who took the photographs, but about who I really am when I think nobody's watching. The person in that 9th photograph, sleeping so restlessly, looks like someone with secrets, someone who might have reasons to be surveilled, documented, studied. The envelope is still sitting on my kitchen table. I haven't thrown it away, haven't shown it to anyone else, because part of me suspects that whoever took these photographs isn't finished, that they're waiting for me to understand something I haven't grasped yet. Something about myself, about this house, about the life I thought I was living in private. And every night, as I lie on the couch pretending to sleep, I listen for the sound of something shifting just outside the room, wondering if tomorrow will bring another envelope, another impossible image, another piece of a puzzle I'm not sure I want to solve. Crime 6, I always thought it was a dream. The screaming, the knife, the shadow dragging something heavy across the floor. But then I found an old police report while browsing a public records site for unrelated research. The details lined up exactly. The house was 2 blocks from where I used to live. The victim had the same facial scar I remember seeing once as a child on someone who smiled at me in a park. I read the autopsy report. It was brutal. The suspect was never found. But one witness sketch looked a lot like me, a younger me with the same birthmark on the neck. Now I'm not sure if I witnessed something or did something. The manila folder arrived by mail the next week. No return address. Inside were photocopies of statements I'd never seen before. Neighbors describing a child running from the house that night. A child with dark hair and a distinctive mark on the neck. The same mark I've carried since birth. I traced my fingers over the police sketches. The resemblance was unsettling. The artist had captured something in the eyes that I recognized from old family photos. A certain intensity that my mother always said made me look older than my years. The witness statements described this child as moving with purpose, not panic. Not running away from something terrible, but walking away from something finished. My childhood home sat empty now, windows boarded up after the last tenants moved out. I found myself standing across the street, studying the angles. From the victim's backyard, you could see directly into our kitchen window. The same window where I used to sit and watch the neighborhood while my parents worked late shifts. I remembered the woman with the scar. She used to wave at me sometimes when she hung laundry outside. Her smile never reached her eyes. The case file mentioned a broken kitchen window at the victim's house. Glass scattered inward, suggesting someone had thrown something from outside. The trajectory analysis pointed to a position consistent with our old kitchen window. I ran my hands along the fence between the properties. The wood was weathered now, but I could still see the notches I'd carved as a child, small marks that looked like tallies. I contacted the investigating officer, now retired. He agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown. His hands shook slightly when he opened his worn notebook. He remembered the case clearly, too clearly. The brutality had stayed with him through decades of other crimes. He mentioned something that wasn't in the public records. The victim had been receiving threatening letters for weeks before the murder, letters written in a child's handwriting. The officer pulled out a photocopy of one of the letters. The handwriting was unmistakably familiar. I'd seen it in old school assignments my mother kept in the attic. The same distinctive way of forming certain letters, the same tendency to press too hard with the pencil, creating indentations that lasted through multiple pages. The letter threatened the woman for something she'd done to a child in the neighborhood, something about watching and waiting. That evening I climbed into the attic and found my old school box. Among the papers and artwork I discovered a journal I'd forgotten about. The entries were sporadic, written in the same careful handwriting as the threatening letters. Most pages described daily observations of neighbors, who came and went, when they left their doors unlocked, which windows faced which directions. The woman with the scar appeared frequently in these notes, always described with a mixture of fascination and disgust. One entry, dated just days before the murder, described a plan in detail. Not a child's fantasy, but a methodical approach to solving what I'd apparently seen as a problem. The woman had been doing something to other children in the neighborhood, something that required intervention. The journal described surveillance patterns, weak points in her home security, and the exact timing of her evening routine. I found myself back at the crime scene house, now carrying a key I'd discovered taped inside my old journal. The lock still turned easily. Inside, the house smelled of dust and something else, something organic that had never quite faded. The kitchen window remained broken, never properly repaired. On the windowsill, barely visible after all these years, someone had carved the same tally marks I'd found on the fence. The basement held the strongest smell, a sweetness that made my stomach turn. In the corner behind an old furnace, I found a small wooden box buried under years of accumulated debris. Inside were photographs, pictures of children from the neighborhood, including several of me. The images were taken from a distance, capturing moments when we thought we were alone, playing in backyards, walking to school. The photos had been sorted and organized with disturbing precision. Among the photographs was a note in the woman's handwriting. It detailed plans for individual children, what she called special sessions scheduled for different weeks. My name appeared multiple times, with particular attention paid to the times my parents worked late. The dates on her calendar extended well into the future. She'd been planning something comprehensive. I sat in that basement, holding evidence of predatory behavior that had been interrupted by violence. The child who killed her had been trying to protect other children. The letters, the planning, the careful execution, it wasn't random violence. It was a calculated decision made by someone too young to understand the full implications, but old enough to recognize a threat that adults had missed. The drive home passed in a blur of fragmented memories finally clicking into place. Conversations with other neighborhood children that had seemed innocent at the time now carried darker undertones. The woman's invitations to visit her house, her unusual interest in our schedules and whereabouts, the way she always seemed to know when our parents weren't home. That night I destroyed the journal and the photographs. The case would remain officially unsolved. The truth wouldn't bring back the dead or ease the trauma that had shaped a child into someone capable of such decisive action. Some secrets are buried for good reasons. Some justice comes from unexpected sources. I still drive past that house sometimes. The new owners have repaired the broken window and planted flowers where the old fence used to stand. Children play in the yard now, their laughter carrying across the street. They seem safe, protected. Sometimes protection requires choices that can never be fully explained or justified. Sometimes the only witness to justice is the person who delivered it. The police report will always remain incomplete. The case will always be unsolved, but I know the truth now. I know what I was capable of, even as a child. I know what I prevented. And I know that some memories are meant to stay buried until we're ready to understand what they really mean. Crime 7, it popped up in a background check I ran on myself for a new job. The photo was grainy, black and white, but undeniably me. Same eyes, same jawline, same scar on the eyebrow. The record said I'd been arrested for assault in a town I've never visited. The case was dismissed, no conviction, but it was on record. I contacted the courthouse, but they had no file. The police station said it never happened. And yet, every search I run still shows that mugshot. When I enlarged it, I noticed something behind me in the photo. A reflection of someone standing just out of frame, grinning. I've been staring at this screen for hours now, my coffee growing cold as I trace the outline of that face in the background. The reflection is distorted, warped by the glass surface, but I can make out the teeth. White, straight, arranged in a smile that makes my stomach turn. I've seen that smile before. The whole thing started when I applied for a position at a financial firm. Standard procedure, they said, just a routine background check, nothing to worry about. But when the HR representative called me back, her voice carried a weight I hadn't expected. There was a pause, then she asked if I had any arrests in my past that I'd forgotten to mention. I told her no, because there weren't any. I've never been arrested, never even had a speeding ticket that stuck. That's when she forwarded me the report. The document was clinical, matter of fact. My name, my social security number, my date of birth, all correct, but underneath was a charge I'd never seen before, assault in the 3rd degree. The location was a small town I'd never heard of, hundreds of miles from anywhere I'd ever lived. The mugshot number was there, clear as day, linking to a photo that showed my face staring back at me with an expression I didn't recognize. I called the courthouse immediately. The clerk was helpful at first, pulling up records on her computer while I waited on hold. When she came back, her tone had changed. There was no file, she said. No record of the arrest, no paperwork, no case number matching what I'd been given. It was as if the entire incident had been erased from their system. The police station was next. I spoke to 3 different officers, each one more confused than the last. They ran my information through their database multiple times. Nothing. No arrest, no booking, no fingerprints on file. The desk sergeant even pulled up the shift schedules from the date in question. No one remembered processing anyone matching my description. But the mugshot remained. Every background check service I tried showed the same image, the same charge, the same phantom arrest that apparently never happened. I hired a lawyer, thinking maybe there was some clerical error, some mix-up with someone who looked similar. She ran her own search and found the same result. The arrest was there, documented and persistent, but completely untraceable to any official source. That's when I started looking closer at the photo itself. I'd always been good with technology, comfortable with image editing software and digital forensics. It was a hobby that had served me well in my previous job, so I downloaded the highest resolution version of the mugshot I could find and began examining every pixel. The lighting was harsh, institutional, casting sharp shadows across my face. The background was the standard gray-blue of a police booking room. Everything looked normal, routine, exactly what you'd expect from an arrest photo. Except for the reflection. It was in the glass partition behind me, barely visible unless you knew what to look for. The surface was scratched and dirty, but I could make out the outline of a figure standing just outside the frame. At first, I thought it might be a police officer or a clerk, someone who would naturally be present during a booking. But as I enhanced the image, adjusted the contrast and brightness, I realized this person was facing the camera directly. They were watching the photo being taken, and they were smiling. I've spent years working with surveillance footage, security cameras, crime scene photographs. You learn to read the details, to spot the things that don't belong. This smile didn't belong. It was too wide, too deliberate, too aware of its own presence in the frame. This wasn't someone casually observing a routine arrest. This was someone who wanted to be seen. The face was partially obscured by the distortion of the glass, but I could make out enough features to know it was familiar. The shape of the nose, the way the hair fell across the forehead, the angle of the jaw. I'd seen this person before, but I couldn't place where or when. It was like trying to remember a dream after waking up. The harder I focused, the more elusive it became. I started going through old photos, searching for any match to the face in the reflection. Social media profiles, work events, family gatherings, nothing, but the feeling of recognition wouldn't leave me alone. This person had been part of my life somehow, somewhere, and I was missing something crucial. Then I found the wedding photos. They were from my cousin's ceremony taken about 2 years ago. I was in the background of most shots, dressed in a navy suit, holding a drink, making small talk with relatives. But in one photo taken during the reception, I noticed someone standing behind me. The angle was different, the lighting softer, but the smile was identical. That same wide, knowing grin that I'd seen in the mugshot reflection. I zoomed in on the face. It was clearer now, unobstructed by glass or shadows. I recognized the person immediately, though I hadn't thought about them in months. They'd been at the wedding as someone's plus one, a friend of a friend who made conversation with me during the cocktail hour. We talked about work, about travel, about nothing particularly memorable. They'd seemed pleasant enough, forgettable in the way that wedding strangers usually are. But now I remembered something else. They'd asked a lot of questions about me. Where I worked, where I lived, what my plans were for the future. At the time, I'd chalked it up to polite conversation, the kind of small talk that fills awkward silences at social events. But looking back, the questions had been specific, probing, almost like an interview. I tried to remember their name, but I couldn't. I'd never gotten their contact information, never connected with them on social media. They'd been a ghost even then, someone who drifted into my orbit for a few hours and then disappeared. But somehow, they'd ended up in the reflection of a mugshot that shouldn't exist. I called my cousin asking about the wedding guest list. She was helpful but vague, saying she'd invited several friends who'd brought their own guests. She couldn't remember everyone who'd attended, and she certainly couldn't remember the specific person I was describing. When I sent her the photo, she said the face looked familiar but couldn't place it. The dead end should have been frustrating, but instead it felt ominous. This person had been carefully positioned in my life, present at exactly the right moment to gather information, to establish some kind of connection. The mugshot wasn't random, it was targeted, personal, designed to implicate me in something I'd never done. I hired a private investigator, someone who specialized in identity theft and digital fraud. She was thorough, professional, and completely baffled by what she found. The mugshot appeared in multiple databases, cross-referenced with legitimate arrest records, but there was no paper trail leading back to its creation. It was as if someone had hacked into the system and inserted a perfectly crafted lie, one that would pass most background checks but crumble under serious scrutiny. The investigator's report was 20 pages long, filled with technical details about database vulnerabilities and digital forgery techniques. But the conclusion was simple. Someone with significant resources and expertise had gone to great lengths to create a false criminal record for me. The question was why. I kept coming back to that smile in the reflection. It haunted me, appearing in my peripheral vision when I least expected it. I'd catch myself looking over my shoulder in crowded places, scanning faces for that particular arrangement of features. The paranoia was exhausting, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, studied, prepared for something I didn't understand. The job offer was withdrawn, of course. The HR representative was apologetic but firm they couldn't risk bringing on someone with a criminal record, regardless of the circumstances. I tried to explain about the investigation, about the impossibility of the arrest, but it didn't matter. The mugshot was real enough for their purposes. I started applying for other positions, but the same pattern emerged. Background checks would turn up the phantom arrest, and opportunities would disappear. My career was being systematically destroyed by a crime I'd never committed, documented by a photo that shouldn't exist. But I kept digging. I traced the digital footprint of the mugshot, following its path through various databases and record-keeping systems. The trail led to a small data processing company, the kind of outfit that handles background checks for employers and landlords. Their security was minimal, their oversight practically non-existent. It would have been easy for someone with the right access to slip false information into their system. I found the employee records for the company, cross-referencing them with the wedding photo and the face in the reflection. One name stood out, someone who'd worked there for 3 years, handling data entry and system maintenance. Their employee photo was a perfect match for the person I'd met at the wedding, the same person whose reflection smiled back at me from the mugshot. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture they formed was disturbing. This wasn't random identity theft or a simple case of mistaken identity. This was a deliberate, coordinated attack on my reputation and livelihood. Someone had spent months, maybe years, planning this deception. They'd infiltrated my social circle, gathered personal information, and used their professional access to plant false evidence against me. But I still didn't know why. The data processing company had no record of the employee I'd identified. Their HR department claimed no one by that name had ever worked there, despite the photo evidence I'd found. When I pressed for more information, they became defensive, then hostile. Legal threats were mentioned. I was told to stop calling. I hired a different investigator, one who specialized in corporate espionage and white-collar crime. She was expensive, but she understood the scope of what I was dealing with. Within a week, she'd uncovered a pattern of similar cases. Other people in my profession in my area who'd been targeted with false criminal records. The details varied, but the methodology was consistent. Phantom arrests, untraceable evidence, careers destroyed by crimes that never happened. The investigator's theory was chilling. Someone was systematically eliminating competition in my field, using sophisticated identity fraud to ruin reputations and force people out of the industry. The mugshot was just one tool in a larger campaign of professional sabotage. But that theory had holes. Why target me specifically? I wasn't particularly successful or well-connected. I hadn't made enemies or threatened anyone's livelihood. I was just another face in the crowd, unremarkable and unthreatening. Unless I wasn't. I started reviewing my work history, looking for patterns I might have missed. Projects I'd worked on, clients I'd served, information I'd had access to. Most of it was routine, forgettable, the kind of data processing that keeps the economy running but rarely makes headlines. But there was one project that stood out, a forensic accounting job I'd done for a law firm, helping them trace financial irregularities in a corporate merger. The work had been tedious, involving thousands of documents and spreadsheets, but I'd found something unusual. A series of shell companies that seemed designed to hide the true ownership of certain assets. I'd flagged it in my report, recommending further investigation. The law firm had been grateful for my thoroughness, but they'd also been strangely eager to minimize the significance of what I'd found. They'd paid my invoice quickly and made it clear that my services were no longer needed. At the time, I'd been relieved to move on to other projects, but now I wondered if I'd stumbled onto something bigger than I'd realized. I pulled up the old files, reviewing my notes and cross-referencing them with public records. The shell companies were still active, still moving money through a complex web of transactions. But now I recognized some of the names involved. One of them was the data processing company where my phantom mugshot had originated. The conspiracy was deeper than I'd imagined. Someone had been watching me since the forensic accounting project, waiting for the right moment to neutralize the threat I represented. The wedding had been their opportunity to gather intelligence, to study me up close and plan their attack. The mugshot was their weapon, designed to destroy my credibility before I could expose what I'd found. But who was behind it? The face in the reflection remained a mystery, connected to the plot but not clearly identified. I'd found the method and the motive, but the mastermind remained hidden. I considered going to the police, but what would I tell them? That someone had created a fake arrest record to discredit me, that a wedding guest had somehow orchestrated a complex conspiracy to destroy my career. It sounded paranoid, delusional, the kind of story that would make them question my mental stability rather than investigate my claims. Instead, I decided to set a trap. I created a fake consulting project advertising my services for another forensic accounting job. The bait was irresistible. A small company with suspicious financial patterns, exactly the kind of case that had gotten me into trouble before. I waited to see who would take the bait. The response came within days. A potential client contacted me, eager to hire my services for a sensitive investigation. They wanted to meet in person to discuss the details of the case and my approach to the work. I agreed, but I also hired security, professionals who could document the meeting and identify whoever showed up. The meeting was in a coffee shop downtown, public and well lit. I arrived early, positioning myself where I could observe the entrance. The security team was scattered throughout the space, invisible but alert. When my client walked in, I recognized them immediately. It was the face from the wedding, from the mugshot reflection, from the employee photo at the data processing company. They looked older now, more worn, but the smile was the same. That wide, knowing grin that had haunted me for months. We sat down together, two professionals discussing a business opportunity. They explained their needs, their concerns, their desire for discretion. I nodded and took notes, playing the role of an eager consultant, but I was also studying them, looking for tells, for signs of deception or recognition. They knew who I was, of course. They'd been watching me, planning this encounter, preparing for whatever came next. But they didn't know that I'd figured out their game, that I'd traced the conspiracy back to its source. They thought they were still in control. As the conversation wound down, they made their offer. A generous fee, a flexible timeline, complete autonomy in my investigation. All I had to do was sign a contract and get started. They pushed the document across the table, their pen ready for my signature. I looked at the contract, scanning the terms and conditions. It was legitimate, professional, exactly what I'd expect from a client. But buried in the fine print was a clause that would give them access to all my work product, all my findings, all the evidence I might uncover. If I signed, I'd be handing them the tools to destroy whatever I discovered. I set the pen down and looked up at them. Their smile had faded, replaced by something harder, more calculating. They knew I'd figured it out, that their elaborate deception was unraveling. The game was over, but the stakes were higher than ever. I excused myself, claiming I needed to review the contract with my lawyer. They didn't object, but their eyes followed me as I left the coffee shop. The security team documented everything, capturing photos and video of the encounter. I had evidence now, proof of the conspiracy, but I also had a problem. The person behind the mugshot was still out there, still dangerous, still capable of destroying my life. The contract had been their latest attempt to control me, but there would be others. They'd invested too much in this deception to simply walk away. I never signed the contract, never took the job, never met with them again. But the mugshot remains, persistent and damaging, a digital scar that won't heal. Every background check still shows the same phantom arrest, the same impossible crime. My career is effectively over, my reputation destroyed by a lie that's more powerful than the truth. Sometimes I wonder if I should have signed the contract, should have played along with their game. Maybe I could have turned the tables, used their own deception against them. But I also know that some traps are designed to be inescapable, that some lies are too perfect to be exposed. The face in the reflection still smiles at me from that mugshot, a reminder of how easily truth can be corrupted, how effortlessly someone can steal your identity and reshape your reality. I've stopped running background checks on myself, stopped looking for solutions to a problem that seems designed to be unsolvable. But late at night, when the house is quiet and the world feels small, I still find myself staring at that photo, studying that smile, wondering who they really are and what they wanted from me. The answer is out there somewhere, hidden in the same shadows that created the lie. But I'm no longer sure I want to find it. Crime-8, I found it wedged behind a loose plank in the attic, dusty, leather-bound, full of cramped handwriting. At first, I thought it was just an old tenant's journal. But the entries mentioned events from my life, private things no one could have known. My first panic attack, the time I got locked in the basement as a child, even what I wore at my high school graduation. The last few pages got darker. They described dreams I hadn't had yet, conversations that hadn't happened, but now they have. Word for word, the final entry reads, "The truth comes when the attic door locks itself." The leather felt wrong under my fingers, too smooth for something that old. I carried it downstairs to my kitchen table, spreading the pages under the fluorescent light. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, not the rushed scrawl of personal thoughts, but something practiced, clinical. I recognized the first entry immediately. It described the day I moved into this house, down to the blue cardigan I wore and how I dropped my keys twice trying to unlock the front door. Nobody had been watching me that day. I was certain of it. The house had been empty for months before I bought it. The entries continued chronologically through my first weeks here, how I arranged my furniture, which room I chose for my bedroom. The night I cried myself to sleep after my mother called with news about my father's diagnosis. Every detail perfect, intimate, impossible. My hands started shaking as I read further. The writer knew about the morning I found the dead bird on my windowsill. They described my exact reaction, how I stood frozen for several minutes before getting a shovel from the garage. They knew I buried it under the oak tree, that I whispered an apology I'd never told anyone about. I called the real estate agent who sold me the house. She sounded distracted, papers rustling in the background. The previous owner, he was elderly, lived alone. Natural causes, they said. Family cleared out his belongings before the sale. Did he keep journals, diaries? I wouldn't know about personal items. Why do you ask? I couldn't explain. How do you tell someone you found a record of your own life written by a stranger? The agent mentioned that the old man had been reclusive. Neighbors rarely saw him, though some reported lights in his attic windows at odd hours. The family lived across the country and had hired a service to clear the house. Quick, efficient, impersonal. That evening I returned to the diary. The entries shifted from observation to prediction. The writer described a conversation I would have with my sister about selling the house. Word for word, it matched a call that happened 3 days after I found the journal. He wrote about a dream where I walked through empty rooms calling for someone whose name I couldn't remember. I had that exact dream the following week. The more I read, the more the boundaries blurred. Was I following his predictions, or were they following me? I found newspaper clippings tucked between the pages, local stories about missing persons, unsolved disappearances, people who lived alone like the old man like me. The articles were yellowed, dated over several years. Each person had bought their house shortly before vanishing. One clipping made my blood freeze. A woman around my age had disappeared from a house just 3 blocks away. The article mentioned she'd called police about feeling watched, about finding evidence someone had been in her home. The case went cold within weeks. I started researching the old man who lived here before me. Death records showed his name, but little else. No obituary, no surviving family despite what the agent claimed. Property records went back decades, showing he'd owned this house for over 40 years. But the strange part was the pattern. Other properties he'd owned, all sold after the residents disappeared. The diary's final entries described my growing paranoia, my late-night research, even my plan to contact authorities. But they also contained something else. Instructions, detailed notes about my daily routine, my vulnerabilities, my fears. Information someone could use to control me, to predict my every move. The last page was different. The handwriting changed, became rushed, desperate. She's getting too close. The pattern can't break. The attic door must lock when she goes up to look for more evidence. When she realizes the truth about who's really been writing this diary, it will be too late. I read that line over and over until the words blurred, the truth about who's been writing this diary. My own handwriting was shaky from stress, but as I looked closer at the journal's pages, something clicked. The careful script looked familiar, too familiar. I ran upstairs to my desk, pulled out old letters, shopping lists, anything with my handwriting. The comparison made my stomach drop. Similar letter formations, the same way I dotted my I's, crossed my T's, but that was impossible. I'd never written these things. Or had I? The memory gaps started making sense. Lost time I'd attributed to stress, to the isolation of living alone. Mornings where I woke up exhausted despite sleeping well. The muddy shoes by my door that I couldn't remember wearing. The attic light I kept finding switched on. I climbed the stairs to the attic, my footsteps echoing in the narrow stairwell. The floorboards creaked under my weight. In the corner where I'd found the diary, I discovered something else. A small desk, positioned perfectly to observe the street below. Binoculars, a camera with a telephoto lens, pages of notes about my neighbors, their schedules, their habits. The desk drawer held more journals, dozens of them documenting other people's lives with the same obsessive detail. The missing woman from 3 blocks away, an elderly man who lived alone, a young couple who'd moved away suddenly, all written in my handwriting. But I had no memory of writing any of it. The attic door slammed shut behind me. The sound echoed through the small space, final and deliberate. I tried the handle. It wouldn't turn. The lock had engaged from the outside, though I knew I was alone in the house. Standing there in the dim light filtering through the attic window, surrounded by evidence of surveillance I couldn't remember conducting, I finally understood. The diary hadn't predicted my future. It had documented my past, a past I'd somehow forgotten, blocked out, denied. I was both the observer and the observed, the predator and the prey, the missing piece in a pattern I'd created but couldn't remember completing. The truth had come just as the diary promised, but it wasn't the truth I'd expected to find. Crime 9, I broke the lock out of frustration. It was in an old cabinet I bought second-hand, supposedly empty. Inside was a manila folder. On the front, my initials written in faded red ink. Inside were photos, me at school, at the grocery store, walking my dog, surveillance style, dated over the last decade. There were printouts of social media posts I don't remember making, messages I don't remember sending, and at the bottom a note, confirmed, predictable behavior, proceed. I don't know who wrote it, but now I hear clicking in the walls, like something mechanical watching. The photos were too clear, too deliberate. Someone had been following me for years without my knowledge. I spread them across my kitchen table, my hands trembling as I examined each one. The grocery store shots showed me buying the same brand of cereal, the same detergent. The school photos captured me leaving work, always through the same exit, always carrying my brown leather bag. Even my weekend walks followed identical routes. The social media printouts disturbed me more. Posts about my favorite coffee shop, check-ins at the library, comments on friends' photos. But the timestamps felt wrong. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my actual posts. Half of these didn't exist in my account. Someone had fabricated an entire digital version of my life, one that seemed more predictable, more routine than reality. The mechanical clicking in the walls had started the night I found the folder. Soft, rhythmic, like a camera shutter or recording device cycling through its functions. I pressed my ear against different sections of the wall, trying to locate the source. It seemed to move, following me from room to room. I decided to retrace my steps from the photos. The antique store where I bought the cabinet sat wedged between a laundromat and a vacant storefront. The elderly owner remembered me, remembered the cabinet. When I showed him one of the photos, his expression changed. "Someone else asked about that piece," he said, wiping his glasses nervously. "Wanted to know who bought it. I told them I don't give out customer information, but they seem to know already." What did they look like? Ordinary, that's what made them memorable. Too ordinary, if you understand. I didn't understand, but I nodded anyway. The clicking in the walls had followed me here somehow. I could hear it faintly beneath the store's ambient noise, that same mechanical rhythm. Back home, I examined the cabinet more carefully. Behind where the locked drawer had been, I found a small hole drilled through the back panel. It was perfectly round, just wide enough for a lens. The cabinet hadn't been empty when I bought it. It had been equipped. The note at the bottom of the folder haunted me. Confirmed, predictable behavior. Proceed. Proceed with what? I started varying my routines, taking different routes to work, shopping at different stores. But the clicking persisted, adapting to my new patterns. I found more evidence in unexpected places. A receipt from a restaurant I'd never visited with my signature at the bottom. Security footage from a parking garage showing someone who looked exactly like me, but walking with a slightly different gait. Bank statements for an account I'd never opened, showing regular deposits and withdrawals that mirrored my actual spending habits. The realization crept over me slowly. Someone hadn't just been watching me, they'd been replacing me piece by piece, creating a parallel version of my existence. The photos, the fake social media posts, the forged documents, it was all preparation for something larger. I started recognizing the pattern in the mechanical clicking. It wasn't random. It was Morse code repeating the same message over and over. Phase 2 complete. Initiate replacement protocol. When I tried to report this to the authorities, they showed me the security footage from the police station. There I was, apparently filing the same report 3 weeks earlier, but I had never been there before. The person in the footage looked exactly like me, spoke with my voice, but something in their posture was wrong, too confident, too certain. The clicking stopped abruptly one morning. The silence felt more ominous than the sound had been. I checked every room, pressing my ear against the walls, but found nothing. That afternoon, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a key and a note. Storage Unit 247. Your replacement is ready. I drove to the storage facility with the key trembling in my hand. Unit 247 was in the back corner, away from the main traffic. The key turned easily. Inside, I found clothes identical to ones in my closet, a driver's license with my photo but different personal details, and a stack of journals written in my handwriting but describing experiences I'd never had. At the bottom of the storage unit was another manila folder. This one contained my real documents, birth certificate, social security card, passport, all marked with red ink. Original, dispose after replacement complete. I realized then that I might not be the first version of myself. The clicking in the walls, the surveillance, the gradual replacement of my identity, it had all happened before. The cabinet, the photos, the storage unit were all part of a system designed to create perfect copies of people's lives. The most disturbing discovery was a video camera hidden in the corner of the storage unit, its red recording light blinking steadily. I had walked directly into their final documentation phase. Someone was watching me discover my own replacement, recording my reactions for future reference. I never found out who was behind the system or why they had chosen me. When I returned home, the clicking had started again, but the pattern was different now. It sounded almost like applause, celebrating the completion of another successful case study. The folder on the kitchen table was gone when I woke up the next morning. In its place was a new note, subject aware, replacement protocol accelerated. Thank you for your cooperation. I still hear the clicking sometimes, but I've learned to ignore it. The person who occasionally uses my name, drives my car, and lives in my house seems content with the arrangement. We've never spoken directly, but I understand we're both part of something larger now. Sometimes I wonder if I'm the original or just another replacement who believes he's the original. The mechanical clicking never answers that question. It just continues its patient, methodical documentation of a life that might not even be mine anymore. Story 10. The old Polaroid carried memories of a distant birthday, its colors faded with time. Faces beamed with joy, candles danced in flickering light, a scene so familiar yet tinged with an unsettling mystery. When the daughter sifted through the box of vintage photos passed down to her, she noticed it. A presence lurking in the background, beyond the circle of familiar faces. A man, shrouded in shadows, lingering just at the edge of the candle's glow. He didn't belong to the family frame. No one could recall his presence, but with each photo he drew nearer. Sarah Winters stumbled upon the collection while sorting through her mother's attic after the funeral. A simple cardboard box labeled Memories held a treasure trove of moments captured in time, a visual diary of family gatherings from her childhood. What should have brought solace turned into the genesis of a haunting revelation. In the initial photo, he was a mere whisper, a faint outline on the periphery during her 7th birthday celebration. In the subsequent image, he had advanced indoors. By the third snapshot, he loomed behind her uncle. None in the photos seemed to notice his silent intrusion. Trembling, Sarah reached out to her father, her voice quivering as she recounted the eerie discovery. "Dad, who is this man lingering in the background of every picture?" A heavy silence hung in the air before a sharp intake of breath broke it. What man? There shouldn't be anyone there except family. Digital copies of the Polaroids were swiftly dispatched to her father. His subsequent call bore a rare tremor in his voice. "That's impossible. We would have spotted a stranger." Detective Marcus Reed sat across Sarah as she laid out the photos on his desk at the precinct. Rain pattered against the windows, casting dancing shadows over the evidence. With weathered hands, the detective scrutinized each photo methodically, his gaze narrowing. "No one recognized this individual?" he inquired, his voice cool yet intrigued. Sarah affirmed no one, but observed the progression. She arranged the images in chronological order. Leaning in, the detective's chair creaked under his weight. What initially seemed like paranoia now took shape before his eyes. The figure navigated through the party, photo by photo, edging closer to the children. In the final frame, he loomed directly behind Sarah's youthful form, a pale hand extending towards her shoulder, just outside the frame. "The photographer," Reed suggested, though doubt laced his tone. "My mother captured these." She set the timer and stepped into the shot. Copies were made, a case file opened. Interviews were conducted with surviving attendees of the party. No one recalled the mysterious man. No hired servers, no visiting neighbors. The property sequestered in the countryside for privacy's sake. Facial recognition software faltered the figure skillfully obscured in every image, as if cognizant of the lens, yet his posture bespoke of practiced intent. The inquiry might have stagnated had Sarah not unearthed more photos in other family albums. Different occasions, different years, same enigmatic figure, a constant presence in the backdrop, unseen in the moment. A digital expert delved into the images, unveiling details hidden by time. A scar on the wrist, a distinctive ring, a partial reflection in a window revealing features long shrouded in darkness. A breakthrough emerged from dental records. The teeth in an enhanced image matched those of Robert Keller, a maintenance worker who vanished after being linked to 3 child abductions in the region. Cold cases from decades past, coinciding with the documented gatherings. Keller had been employed by the company that serviced the vacation property where Sarah's birthday had unfolded, possessing master keys to numerous rental properties where families congregated, properties where children had gone missing. Excavation beneath Keller's former abode unearthed buried items, a hair clip akin to one worn by a vanished girl, a toy car belonging to a boy who disappeared after a family gathering, a bracelet Sarah recognized as her own, presumed lost in her childhood. Alone in her apartment, surrounded by the photos that unraveled a tapestry of concealed horrors, Sarah awaited news from the detective. Remains discovered near a vacation property had been identified. DNA confirmed it belonged to one of the missing children. Her gaze settled on the final birthday photo, capturing her family frozen in a moment of celebration. And there behind her younger self, half shrouded in shadow yet unmistakably present, the figure lingered, patient, calculating. Invisible to all but the lens. The revelation intertwined unsolved mysteries spanning decades. Families received closure, though not the solace they had sought. The shadow in the family album had stepped into the light of justice, his presence acknowledged after years of lurking in plain sight. Sarah gathered the photos, returning them to the box. They were now evidence, a testament that sometimes the gravest threats are those unseen by mortal eyes but captured in the stillness of film. Figures that glide through festivities unnoticed, leaving behind faint whispers of their ephemeral passage through frozen fragments of time. Story 11. Once upon a time, a family moved into a quaint suburban property, unaware of the secrets buried beneath its floors. The Mercer family thought they had found the perfect home with character and history. Little did they know that the house held a sinister past that would soon entangle their lives. Hidden beneath the living room floor, a door emerged, cloaked in mystery and rust. With trembling hands, they pried it open, revealing a dark descent into the unknown. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the scene, where the basement whispered of secrets long kept. Photographs adorned the walls, capturing moments of the Mercer family's lives taken from within their own home. A chilling realization dawned upon them: someone had been watching, lurking in the shadows of their sanctuary. As the investigation unfolded, a trail of eerie discoveries emerged. Previous owners, each staying for a fleeting moment before fleeing, leaving behind a house tainted by unseen eyes. The truth lay hidden in the basement, where a journal penned by a ghostly figure named Edward Kelvin revealed a disturbing obsession with the families who had resided within the walls. Kelvin, a phantom of the house's past, had constructed a web of surveillance, watching, waiting, and documenting the lives of those who unknowingly shared his domain. His presence, a specter haunting the very foundation of the home, blurring the lines between reality and delusion. When Kelvin was finally found, curled within the shadows he had crafted, his words echoed through the empty halls. He spoke of ownership, of a twisted perception that deemed the families mere players in his twisted narrative. The families, like ghosts themselves, fled the house, leaving behind echoes of a life interrupted by an unseen voyeur. As the trial unfolded and the house crumbled, the families carried with them the weight of a violation unseen. The memories of shared moments tainted by the knowledge that they had never been truly alone. The house, now a memory buried beneath the earth, whispered of a past that refused to fade. And so, in the stillness of the night, the families who had once called the house home found themselves haunted by the specter of Edward Kelvin. His presence lingered in the corners of their minds, a reminder that sometimes the walls we trust to protect us may hold secrets darker than we dare to imagine. Story 12. The aged box lay hidden beneath layers of clutter in the dusty attic, a forgotten treasure trove left behind by the house's past inhabitants. Among the faded Polaroids of joyful celebrations and family gatherings, one photograph stood out. It captured a moment in her living room, the familiar furniture, the familiar decor, yet the family depicted was not hers. And there, lurking in the background, a figure stood in the shadows, barely visible. As Rebecca gazed at the eerie image, a shiver ran down her spine, her fingers trembling ever so slightly, setting the edges of the photo into a gentle vibration. Descending the creaking wooden stairs, she brought the photograph to the stark light of the kitchen, where she scrutinized the similarities between her home and the strangers in the picture. The archway, the molding, the bay window all mirrored her own dwelling, yet these faces were unknown to her. The arrival of Detective Morgan, clad in a worn leather jacket, marked the beginning of a quiet investigation into the mysterious photograph. Delving into the history of the house, they uncovered a pattern of families vanishing without a trace over the years, leaving behind only unanswered questions and a haunting presence in the shadows. Forensic analysis dated the photo to 15 years prior, revealing eerie details that hinted at something sinister: a figure in the hallway, tall and male, watching intently. The threads of the investigation led back to Samuel Whitfield, the enigmatic architect of the house who had met a tragic end, yet seemed to linger in the shadows of the home he had built. Beneath the concrete of the basement, a chilling discovery awaited them: all the missing families, perfectly preserved, their stories locked in a macabre time capsule. The camera that captured their final moments, along with a journal detailing their lives, painted a disturbing picture of Samuel Whitfield's obsession with the families who inhabited his creation. As Rebecca sought refuge in a hotel under police protection, a mysterious call in the dead of night heralded a chilling realization: the presence of the unseen watcher was not confined to the past. The investigation lingered, the house remained silent, its secrets buried deep within its walls, waiting to be unraveled by those brave enough to seek the truth. The enigma of Samuel Whitfield persisted, his legacy casting a long shadow over the house and all who dared to uncover its mysteries. In the darkness, new photographs developed, new families emerged, and the watchers in the shadows continued their silent vigil, unseen yet ever present. And as the search for the truth persisted, those who delved too deep found themselves ensnared in a web of darkness, where the line between reality and illusion blurred, and the specter of Samuel Whitfield loomed large, a ghostly presence watching from the shadows, waiting to be revealed. Story 13, the mysterious apartment held its secrets within its aging walls and creaking floors. The new tenant, Sarah Coleman, felt a peculiar unease as she heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing from above. Each step was deliberate, too steady to be explained away by settling noises or curious critters. Sarah lived on the top floor, yet the footsteps persisted, slow and measured, a haunting rhythm in the darkness. One night, emboldened by a mix of fear and curiosity, Sarah tentatively tapped the ceiling with a broomstick. The footsteps ceased abruptly, plunging the apartment into an eerie silence. Then in the stillness, a single knock echoed back from within the ceiling itself. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine, but she brushed it off, attributing the strange occurrence to her overactive imagination. As the nights passed, the methodical footfalls continued, tracing invisible paths across the ceiling above Sarah's head. She adapted, drowning out the unsettling sounds with blaring television volumes and the solace of headphones, desperate to escape the unexplained presence that seemed to lurk just beyond her reach. Detective Morris was drawn into the enigmatic tale of the apartment when a routine repair led to a shocking discovery. A maintenance worker stumbled upon a hidden crawlspace concealed behind a section of drywall outside Sarah's unit. Inside, a clandestine living space awaited a jarring juxtaposition to the ordinary facade of the building. Food wrappers, water bottles, a tattered blanket, and a cryptic notebook hinted at a clandestine observer. The notebook, a chilling chronicle of Sarah's daily life, revealed unsettling details meticulously documented by an unknown observer. Her routines, her habits, her every move meticulously recorded. The final entries descended into madness, with cryptic symbols scrawled along the margins, hinting at a disturbed mind fixated on its unsuspecting subject. Forensics unearthed a web of hidden passages woven into the building's structure, connecting multiple apartments to secret vantage points that centered on Sarah's residence. Former tenants whispered of feeling watched, of unexplained phenomena that had driven them away in fear, their experiences buried beneath the facade of normalcy. The puzzle unraveled further with the discovery of microscopic blood spatter in the hidden passages, linking the enigmatic observer to a missing person, Martin Weaver, a former resident who had vanished without a trace. The pieces fell into place, leading Detective Morris down a twisted path of secrets and shadows. The elusive figure at the heart of the mystery, Edward Mercer, emerged as a master of disguise, a former construction worker who had meticulously crafted his hidden network of passages and observation points. His eerie obsession with his unsuspecting subjects transcended reason, leaving a trail of unsolved disappearances in his wake. As the investigation delved deeper, a remote cabin revealed the extent of Edward's twisted fixation. Photographs, maps, and journals painted a chilling portrait of a man consumed by his voyeuristic pursuits. The chilling realization dawned that Sarah Coleman had narrowly escaped a fate shared by others who had fallen prey to Edward's sinister schemes. The manhunt for Edward Mercer continues, his shadow looming large over the lives he had disrupted. Detective Morris, haunted by the echoes of footsteps in the night, grapples with the lingering question of who else might be listening, waiting in the silence that now permeates the once tranquil apartment building. And as the night falls, a chilling whisper lingers in the air, a reminder of the darkness that can hide behind closed doors and beneath floorboards, unseen and unheard until it's too late. Story 14. The tale begins in a quaint costume shop, its days numbered as old treasures found new homes. Among the relics, a woman's hand brushed against a mask nestled on a dusty shelf. Its delicate features held an unsettling lifelike quality, drawing her closer with a mysterious allure. The mask intrigued her, whispering tales of forgotten secrets and untold mysteries. Placing it on the counter, the cashier hesitated, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "That's not ours," he murmured, his voice tinged with a hint of foreboding. Confusion clouded the woman's thoughts as she checked for a tag, only to find none. With a shrug, she decided to take the mask home, unaware of the haunting journey it would set in motion. That night, as the world slumbered in peaceful oblivion, a soft sound roused her from slumber, a gentle whisper of fabric shifting like a ghostly touch on the edge of perception. Eyes fluttering open, she searched the darkness, heart quickening as dread tiptoed through her veins. The mask was missing from its place on the dresser, causing a shiver to run down her spine. There it sat, perched on her nightstand, facing her with a silent intensity that sent a chill down her spine. The woman, known as Catherine Reed, would soon become a tragic figure in a tale that defied reason and logic. It was her neighbor who stumbled upon the eerie scene, drawn by a sense of unease that lingered in the morning air. The front door stood ajar, allowing a sliver of golden light to pierce the shadows within. Expecting a simple visit to return a borrowed book, the neighbor instead stumbled upon a chilling sight that would echo through the corridors of time. Catherine lay motionless on her bedroom floor, a silent witness to the unknown horrors that had unfolded in the dead of night. The mask, a phantom presence, had vanished into the ether, leaving behind a void of questions and unspoken fears. Detective Morgan arrived, a beacon of authority in a sea of uncertainty, her keen eyes scanning the room for clues that whispered of secrets untold. The shutter of a camera clicked rhythmically, capturing the somber tableau that bore witness to a life extinguished too soon. Among the whispers of the investigative team, the absence of forced entry stood out like a puzzle piece waiting to be solved. An officer's pen scratched against paper, noting the mundane details that painted a portrait of the extraordinary. A single drawer ajar, a water glass bearing traces of lipstick mundane yet tinged with a sense of foreboding. The room held its secrets close, offering no easy answers to the enigma of Catherine's untimely demise. The medical examiner, a harbinger of truth in a realm of shadows, bent over the still form, his expression grave with the weight of the unknown. "Cause of death unclear at first glance," he intoned, his voice a solemn echo in the quiet room. No outward wounds marred Catherine's form, no signs of a struggle etched upon her pale skin. His gaze shifted to her frozen features, etched with a mask of terror that transcended the bounds of mortal understanding. The detective knelt beside the fallen woman, her voice barely a whisper in the hush of the room. Something frightened her to her core, she murmured, her words laden with a sense of grim realization. Catherine, a connoisseur of art and authenticity, had met her end in a dance of shadows and whispers, her final moments a testament to a truth stranger than fiction. As the investigation delved deeper, a thread of curiosity led to the discovery of security footage from the costume shop, a glimpse into a world where reality and illusion danced a macabre tango. The cashier's perplexed reaction to the mask hinted at a truth veiled in shadows, a secret that lurked at the fringes of perception. Visiting the now empty shop, the detective confronted the owner, a figure haunted by the specter of the past. His words dripped with a mixture of fear and resignation, revealing glimpses of a truth too bizarre to be easily comprehended. The mask, an enigma wrapped in mystery, had surfaced during a clearance sale, its origins lost in the mists of time. Each thread unraveled in the tapestry of the investigation led to a revelation that chilled the blood and quickened the pulse. Forensics unearthed microscopic fibers embedded in Catherine's fingertips, a silent testament to a struggle unseen, a battle fought in the shadows. "These fibers are unlike any we've encountered," the lab technician explained, his voice a whisper of dread in the sterile confines of the lab. Human hair intertwined with an unidentified organic substance, a concoction of the unknown that defied rational explanation. The past whispered its secrets through the strands of time, weaving a tapestry of darkness that ensnared all who dared to unravel its mysteries. Records of similar deaths, shrouded in the cloak of the inexplicable, emerged like specters from forgotten tombs. Each victim had crossed paths with an unusual mask, a harbinger of doom that bore the mark of an ancient ritual shrouded in shadow. The detective, a seeker of truth in a realm of shadows, delved into the annals of the past, seeking answers that eluded the grasp of reason. A retired detective, a relic of bygone days, offered a key to the enigma, a yellowed file that whispered of forgotten horrors and unspeakable truths. Ancient symbols etched within the masks, a language of the occult that spoke of a ritual steeped in darkness and despair. Soul transference, a concept as old as time itself, lurked at the heart of the mystery, a specter of dread that cast a long shadow over the present. In a hidden corner of Catherine's apartment, a journal lay concealed behind a loose baseboard, its pages a testament to a mind teetering on the brink of madness. Her final entry, a frantic scribble of words, spoke of a presence unseen, a malevolence that lurked in the shadows of her home. The mask, a silent sentinel of doom, watched with empty eyes that bore witness to a truth too terrible to comprehend. "The mask moves," her words echoed in the detective's mind, a siren call to the unknown that beckoned from the depths of the abyss. Catherine's research, a trail of breadcrumbs in a forest of shadows, led to a revelation that shattered the fragile facade of reality. The masks, vessels of a dark entity hungering for souls, bore the weight of centuries-old sins, moving from host to host in a sinister dance of death and despair. The detective pieced together the fragments of a puzzle too vast to be contained within the confines of reason. The medical examiner's final pronouncement, a verdict of death by extreme fear, lingered in the air like a curse waiting to be lifted. What horrors could drive a soul to the brink of oblivion, to a fate worse than death itself? A flicker of hope bloomed amidst the darkness when surveillance footage unveiled a figure moving in the night, a specter wearing Catherine's visage like a macabre masquerade. The mask, a harbinger of doom, had found a new host, a vessel for its insatiable hunger that prowled the night in search of its next victim. An alert was issued for the missing mask, a shadow that eluded the grasp of the living, slipping through the cracks of reality like a whisper in the wind. Months passed, the memory of Catherine's fate fading like a ghostly echo in the corridors of time. Then whispers reached the ears of the investigators. A peculiar mask had surfaced in a distant vintage shop, its allure drawing in the unsuspecting like moths to a flame. By the time authorities arrived, the mask had vanished once more, leaving behind a trail of questions and unspoken fears. The buyer remained a phantom, a ghostly presence that eluded the grasp of justice, slipping through the fingers of those who sought to unravel the enigma of the mask. The case, officially unsolved, lingered like a shadow in the detective's mind, a reminder of the darkness that lurked at the fringes of reality. Catherine's journal, a relic of a truth too terrible to be contained, rested in a drawer, a silent witness to the horrors that danced in the night. As night descended like a velvet shroud, the detective awoke with a start, a sense of unease lingering in the air like a ghostly whisper. She checked her windows and doors, securing the locks against the encroaching darkness, a silent prayer on her lips. The mask, a phantom presence waiting in the wings, hungered for what lay behind the eyes of the living, a vessel poised to be filled with the essence of the unwary. And so the mask waited in the shadows, a specter of doom poised to strike once more. In the stillness of the night, it whispered its siren song, a melody of death and despair that echoed through the corridors of time. And when it found its next victim, a soul would awaken to the soft sound of movement in the dark, to find the mask drawing closer with empty eyes fixed upon its prey, a hunger that knew no bounds and a thirst that could never be slaked. Story 15, in the hushed corridors of an old apartment, where the heating system groaned and the pipes rattled as if sharing long-held secrets, a sense of mystery lingered like a whisper in the air. It was a place where shadows danced and the past murmured faintly to those who dared to listen. One resident, a woman known as Detective Morgan Shaw, found herself drawn into a chilling enigma that defied logic and reason. The apartment had a history, a tale woven into its very walls. It was here that Alina Reeves, a beloved kindergarten teacher, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only echoes of her presence. As Detective Shaw stood amidst the stillness of the vacant apartment, her gaze fixed on the rusted vent cover that seemed to guard a dark and unsettling secret, she felt a shiver run down her spine. The forensics team moved with precision, capturing the scene in flashes of light as they uncovered the chilling truth that lay hidden within the walls. Alina had spoken of voices whispering through the vents, of unseen eyes watching her every move. Her fears had been dismissed as mere figments of an overactive imagination, a result of the old building's creaks and groans. But as Shaw knelt beside the vent, tracing the deep gouges left by desperate fingers, a sense of unease crept over her. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, revealing a sinister presence lurking in the shadows, a predator preying on the unsuspecting souls within the building. Alina's sister had spoken of her growing paranoia, of her belief that someone was speaking to her through the very walls of her home. Shaw listened intently, piecing together the fragments of a puzzle that spoke of a darkness that had long been concealed. The threads of the investigation led Shaw down a twisted path, uncovering a trail of deception and malice that seemed to emanate from within the building itself. The building superintendent, Harold Weber, stood at the center of it all, his calm facade masking a chilling truth that sent shivers down Shaw's spine. As the layers of deceit were peeled away, a horrifying revelation emerged. Weber had been living within the walls, a silent watcher who had preyed on the unsuspecting residents, luring them into his twisted web of obsession and control. The evidence spoke volumes, painting a portrait of a man consumed by a dark compulsion, a man who saw himself as the very voice of the building, whispering secrets and lies to those who would listen. Shaw listened to the haunting recordings, the echoes of Aliner's voice mingling with the whispers of a madman who believed himself to be the master of his domain. Weber's arrest brought a sense of closure, but the shadows that lingered in the empty apartment building remained. Residents spoke of cold drafts that carried voices, of whispers that seemed to echo through the very walls themselves. The building stood as a silent witness to the horrors that had unfolded within its walls, a testament to the darkness that dwelled beneath its seemingly ordinary facade. As Detective Shaw walked away from the building, the echoes of the past still haunting her thoughts, she knew that some mysteries were meant to remain unsolved, some secrets buried deep within the walls of a place that would forever be marked by the whispers of those who had fallen victim to its chilling embrace. Story 16. In the quiet stillness of a suburban neighborhood, a mysterious package arrived for Sarah Miller. No return address, just a plain envelope containing a single brass key weathered with time. Sarah, a retired teacher living alone, felt a strange familiarity with the key, though she couldn't place it. With a sense of curiosity tinged with unease, she tried the key in every lock she owned, but none yielded to its touch. Perplexed, she placed the key on her coffee table. And then, as if in response to its presence, the old grandfather clock in the hallway let out a single, hollow chime, a sound that hadn't graced the air for years, as the clock had long been silent and broken. Sarah's unease grew, leading her to report the strange occurrence to the authorities. The responding officer, while kind, initially brushed off her concerns as a simple mistake or oddity. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, that the key held a deeper significance. Reluctantly, the officer took the key into evidence, placing it in a small bag that would soon become a focal point of a dark and disturbing investigation that would shake the very foundations of the neighborhood. Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator with a keen intuition, received the case file. The brass key sat on his desk, unassuming yet somehow unsettling in its simplicity. Background checks on Sarah revealed nothing suspicious, no criminal history, no red flags in her personal life. She seemed to be an innocent bystander in a sinister game she never wished to play. Forensic analysis found no fingerprints on the key except for Sarah's own. The envelope revealed no clues, just a generic postmark. The key itself, a standard Schlage, seemed unremarkable, yet it held a secret that would unravel a chilling mystery. The breakthrough came when Detective Harmon decided to run the key's unique pattern through the department's database. A match was found, a cold case from 7 years prior, linked to a storage unit where evidence of unspeakable horrors had been discovered. The original investigation had hit a dead end, but Harmon's determination breathed new life into the case. The key was a connection to a darkness that had long been lurking in the shadows, waiting to be brought into the light. As the investigation unfolded, a disturbing picture began to emerge. The key led to a man named Harold Jenkins, a former neighbor of Sarah's with a hidden past. Jenkins, a quiet and unassuming man on the surface, had a history that hinted at something far more sinister. The search for Jenkins intensified as the true horror of his crimes came to light. A cabin, hidden deep in the woods and registered to Jenkins' deceased mother, revealed a chilling secret, a room filled with brass keys, each one a haunting reminder of lives lost and souls taken. Behind the cabin, buried in shallow graves, lay the remains of Jenkins' victims' women who had disappeared without a trace, their stories lost to the passage of time. As the manhunt for Jenkins spread nationwide, the community was gripped by fear. The press dubbed him the Keymaster, a name that sent shivers down the spines of all who heard it. In a final, desperate act, Jenkins took his own life, leaving behind a journal that detailed his crimes and a message for Sarah, a chilling reminder of the darkness that had touched her life so unexpectedly. The investigation revealed a total of 32 victims, their stories now told but their voices forever silenced. Families found closure, but the scars left by Jenkins' actions would never fully heal. And so the keys sit in an evidence locker, silent witnesses to the horrors that unfolded behind closed doors. A reminder that sometimes the most ordinary facades hide the darkest of truths, waiting to be unlocked by those brave enough to seek the answers hidden within. Story 17. In the stillness of the night, the house stood silent, its windows dark, a forgotten relic of a past shrouded in mystery. Whispers among the neighbors spoke of a young woman, Elise Winters, who vanished without a trace, leaving the old house to the mercy of time. Years passed and the house remained empty until one day new tenants dared to step across its threshold. As they explored their new abode, they came upon a locked bedroom, a puzzle waiting to be solved. With a creak and a groan, the door yielded to their persistence, revealing a scene frozen in time. The air was thick with neglect, dust dancing in the faint light filtering through the curtains. But there was something more, a sense of unease that lingered like a shadow in the corners. The room was pristine, as if awaiting its occupant's return. The bed neatly made, the mirror polished to a gleam. And there on the desk, a solitary candle had burned down to a mere stub, its wax a testament to time passing unnoticed. But the true revelation lay in the notebook, its pages a silent witness to Elise's final moments. Detective Morgan delved into its secrets, each word a whisper from the past. Elise's meticulous handwriting painted a picture of a young woman haunted by shadows, her fears etched into the paper. "I know he's watching me tonight," the inked words cried out, a chilling echo of a voice silenced by the night. The detective's brow furrowed as he absorbed the gravity of Elise's final entry, a plea for someone to believe her, to understand the danger lurking in the shadows. The room held its secrets close, revealing little of the truth behind Elise's disappearance. The scent of dust and something more lingered in the air, a hint of a story left untold. As the investigation unfolded, layers of deception peeled away to reveal a web of corruption and betrayal. Elise, a paralegal with a keen eye for detail, had stumbled upon a dark secret buried within the heart of a prestigious law firm. Her pursuit of justice had led her down a dangerous path, uncovering a trail of lies and deceit that reached far beyond the confines of the old house. The revelations hidden in her notebook painted a damning portrait of those who sought to silence her. The discovery of hidden files and clandestine recordings exposed a conspiracy that shook the foundations of power and privilege. The truth, once buried, clawed its way to the surface, demanding justice for those who had fallen victim to greed and manipulation. In the darkness of that locked room, Elise's legacy lived on, a beacon of light in a world shrouded in darkness. Her courage and determination echoed through the halls, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, the truth would always find a way to be heard. As the case unfolded, the tendrils of corruption stretched far and wide, ensnaring those who thought themselves beyond reproach. The wheels of justice turned inexorably, bringing to light the sins of the powerful and the deceit of the cunning. In the end, justice prevailed, casting a light into the shadows and illuminating the path forward. Elise's story, though tragic, served as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the darkest of nights, hope could still be found. And so the house stood silent once more, its walls echoing with the whispers of the past. The truth had been revealed, the mystery unraveled, but the memory of Elise Winters lingered on, a guardian of justice in the stillness of the night. Story 18. In the heart of the city stood a quaint coffee shop that held a secret within its walls. For years, a mysterious man frequented the shop, his presence as consistent as the rising sun. His routine was a dance of familiarity, same table, same order, same silence. The barista knew his face, a silent acknowledgement shared in passing, yet no one knew his name. Then one day he didn't show up. Concerned by his absence, the police were called to investigate. In his usual spot, they discovered a wallet left behind, a lone sentinel of his enigmatic existence. Inside the wallet was a driver's license bearing a photo of the man, but where a name should have been, there was only emptiness, a void where identity should reside. Detective Sarah Mercer delved into the mystery, her curiosity piqued by the enigma of the man now known as John Doe. Reviewing the security footage, she watched as he entered the coffee shop, a ghostly figure amidst the bustling crowd. Average in appearance, unassuming in demeanor, he blended into the background like a whisper in the wind. The footage captured his every move, the order of black coffee, the quiet retreat to his secluded table, the gentle scribbling in a weathered notebook. And then, the moment that defied logic, he vanished into the ether, leaving behind only questions and shadows. As Mercer pored over the evidence, a sense of unease settled upon her like a shroud. The wallet, devoid of personal details, the credit cards, mere placeholders for non-existent accounts, the lone business card, a cryptic invitation into the unknown. The barista's recollections offered no solace, painting a portrait of a solitary figure, a ghost among the living. The notebook, filled with cryptic symbols and esoteric diagrams, whispered secrets that eluded comprehension. With each passing day, the mystery deepened, shrouding the coffee shop in an aura of the uncanny. Mercer's investigation unearthed anomalies, strange occurrences that defied rational explanation. The flickering time stamp, a glitch in the matrix, or a sign of something more profound. A mirror, ancient and mysterious, hung in silent vigil within the shop, its reflective surface a gateway to the unknown. Symbols etched into its frame mirrored those found in John Doe's notebook, a connection woven through time and space. When the mirror was finally removed, a hidden chamber was revealed, a sanctuary of secrets guarded by the echoes of the past. Wallets identical to the one left behind by John Doe, each a vessel of untold stories. A journal chronicling experiments in temporal manipulation and identity transcendence, penned by a hand lost to time. The pieces of the puzzle began to align, painting a portrait of a man caught between worlds, a traveler in the currents of reality. Margaret Keller, a beacon of understanding in the darkness, shed light on the enigma of Daniel Weston, the physicist lost to the mists of time. As Mercer unraveled the threads of the past, a revelation dawned, a convergence of realities, a crossing of thresholds. The coffee shop, a nexus point where the fabric of existence frayed, where parallel worlds intersected in a dance of shadows and light. And in the final moments of the investigation, as Mercer gazed into the shattered mirror, she glimpsed the truth reflected back at her two versions of the same man, existing in harmony and discord, a testament to the fragility of reality. The case of the man who didn't exist faded into legend, a whispered tale of mystery and wonder. The coffee shop closed its doors, the building a silent witness to the secrets it held. Daniel Weston's fate remained a mystery, his legacy a haunting echo in the winds of time. And Detective Mercer, haunted by the specter of the unknown, found solace in the pages of a notebook, her pen a bridge between worlds, her mind a vessel for truths unseen. As the days passed and the world moved on, she remained a sentinel of the strange, a guardian of mysteries unsolved. And somewhere in the quiet moments between dusk and dawn, the fragment of an antique mirror shimmered in the darkness, a portal to realms beyond, a whisper of a world just out of reach. Story 19. The river flowed lazily that morning, its surface like a mirror, undisturbed by the gentle breeze. The fisherman, lost in his thoughts, almost missed the sight of a solitary suitcase bobbing near the shore. At first it seemed like a mere discard, perhaps old clothes cast aside. But as he approached, a foul odor wafted towards him, thick and suffocating. The case was bound in chains, its metal edges tinged with rust from exposure to the elements. When authorities pried it open, it wasn't clothes that greeted them, but a haunting discovery. Within the confines of the suitcase lay strands of hair, fingers frozen in a macabre grip, and at the very bottom, a chilling message: "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer arrived at the scene, her senses assaulted by the grim tableau before her. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s, with dark hair now matted and skin pallid from its time in the water. The medical examiner worked meticulously, cataloging every detail before the body was solemnly taken away. What struck Mercer most profoundly was not the manner of disposal, but the eerie care taken with the victim's appearance: manicured nails, freshly styled hair, clad in expensive attire. "She wasn't killed here," Mercer remarked, her gaze fixed on the tranquil waters lapping against the muddy shore. "She was prepared, displayed." The victim was identified as Catherine Walsh, a successful real estate agent renowned for her dealings in high-end properties. Divorced and childless, she lived a solitary life in an upscale neighborhood. Colleagues painted a picture of a woman driven, meticulous, and fiercely private. Her assistant, the one who reported her missing, insisted that Catherine would never have missed a crucial appointment with affluent clients, a sale that promised her the largest commission of her career. Investigations delved into Walsh's impeccably kept modernist home. Every aspect was flawlessly arranged, almost unnaturally perfect. Designer furniture meticulously placed, not a speck of dust to be found. The refrigerator stocked with neatly labeled meals for each day. The closet housing an array of garments organized by color and shoes carefully stored in protective bags. However, a sense of disarray lurked in her home office, a drawer slightly ajar revealing a leather-bound journal. The final entry within read, "He's watching again. Same car, different plates." A digital examination of Walsh's online activity unveiled a disconcerting pattern, an influx of messages from unknown sources, all bearing the same ominous phrase, "I see your perfection," sent simultaneously on various days. Her browsing history hinted at her search for home security systems and self-defense tools. Mercer pieced together these chilling clues with the evidence from the crime scene, the meticulous arrangement of the victim's body, the eerie presentation. "Our perpetrator is methodical," she confided in her partner. "This was no crime of passion. This was a ritual." The breakthrough emerged from an unexpected quarter. A local pawnshop proprietor recognized Walsh's distinctive emerald necklace, absent from her belongings. The individual who had pawned it was no stranger Michael Linden, an unassuming maintenance worker. Surveillance footage depicted Linden entering Walsh's building on multiple occasions over several months, sometimes with his maintenance cart, other times without, always during hours when she would be occupied showcasing properties. Upon searching Linden's modest abode, investigators were met with a chilling sight: walls adorned with photographs of Walsh and other women, all sharing a striking resemblance, all captured without their knowledge. Some images were harshly crossed out in red ink. Walsh was just one of the women depicted. Concealed behind a false panel in his closet, a shrine emerged. Personal items belonging to each victim meticulously arranged: a hairbrush with strands of hair, tissues stained with lipstick, receipts, keys. Each collection accompanied by a small notebook chronicling daily routines, preferences, habits. The interrogation room grew icy as Linden was brought in. His demeanor remained composed, his appearance neat, his voice unflinching as he finally uttered, "They were imperfect. They paraded as flawless, but I saw the truth. Catherine's desk drawer was always in disarray. Her lipstick application was flawed. Her perfection was a facade." The hunt for the first two victims, alluded to in his note, led investigators to remote locations where two additional suitcases were discovered. Inside lay women who bore a striking resemblance to Walsh, both real estate agents touting their meticulous attention to detail. During the trial, Linden sat motionless, his countenance vacant as the prosecution outlined his systematic approach. He had shadowed each woman for months, absorbing their routines, infiltrating their homes, scrutinizing their lives. When he ultimately claimed them, he sought to rectify what he perceived as their flaws, tending to their hair, applying makeup with precision, dressing them in their finest attire before extinguishing their lives. The families of the victims observed in silence as the judge pronounced a life sentence without the possibility of parole for Linden. For Detective Mercer, the case was officially concluded, yet enigmas lingered. What had triggered Linden's fixation on these specific women? What imperfection within himself had driven him to erase perceived flaws through such heinous acts? As the river meandered downstream, its waters gradually clearing of all traces, the precinct bore witness to a silent vigil. On Mercer's desk lay copies of those haunting notebooks, a stark reminder that behind closed doors, within seemingly mundane lives, darkness may dwell beneath the veneer of normalcy. And sometimes the most perilous predators are those who dwell in plain sight, observing, waiting for a solitary flaw to expose itself. Story 20. In the quiet town, there was a house at the edge of the woods that was never spoken of. It stood solitary, its windows darkened, its porch weary under the weight of time. No one laid claim to it, and its origins remained a mystery lost to memory. But one day a group of hikers ventured too close, and what they discovered sent shivers down their spines, names carved into the weathered wooden walls, etched deep as if for warnings. At the very bottom of the list, fresh and untouched by the elements, was a name unfamiliar to them all. And then, in a hushed voice, one of them uttered, "That name belongs to me." Under the cloak of night, a call came through to dispatch, a simple report of trespassing. The voice on the other end belonged to Mason Wright, the leader of the hiking group who had stumbled upon his own name etched into the abandoned house. The responding officers anticipated nothing more than a case of juvenile mischief, a mere prank among friends, but what they uncovered was beyond rational explanation. Detective Sarah Keller arrived at the scene as darkness descended upon the forest. Her flashlight pierced through the shadows, revealing the worn facade of the structure. The names of 27 individuals etched vertically along the eastern wall told a haunting tale. Some names had faded with time, nearly blending into the wood's gray surface, while others remained sharp and clear as if freshly carved. And at the very end, Mason Wright, the carving still faintly scented with the aroma of fresh sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason professed, his breath forming wisps in the chilly air. "I cannot fathom how my name came to be here." The investigation commenced with deep dives into the backgrounds of each name inscribed on the walls. The findings sent chills through the detective team. Every name belonged to an individual reported missing over the past 40 years. Some cases had gone cold, while others remained open. But a common thread bound them all: the missing individuals had vanished while hiking alone. Forensic experts meticulously documented each carving, noting the depths, techniques, and weathering variations. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, correlated with a missing persons case from 37 years ago. The records recounted the tale of a young woman who ventured into the woods and never returned, leaving behind only a hiking boot by a stream. Detective Keller delved into Mason's past, questioning him extensively. His narrative remained consistent. He had no ties to the area beyond this particular hiking trip with his college friends. They had chosen the trail randomly, guided by an online recommendation. Nothing in Mason's history connected him to the other names etched on the house. The focus of the investigation shifted towards Mason's companions. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, provided snapshots taken during their hike. Upon scrutinizing the images, analysts noticed something unsettling: a blurry figure lurking in the background of 3 distinct photos. The figure, resembling a tall, slender man, always partially obscured by the trees. "We saw no one else on the trail," Emily affirmed. "We would have remembered." Detective Keller authorized a search of the house's interior. Though the structure appeared abandoned, a chilling discovery awaited in the basement. Personal belongings of the missing hikers were meticulously arranged on shelves: watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, all labeled with the corresponding names from the exterior wall. The evidence technicians worked diligently, cataloging each item. Under ultraviolet light, traces of blood patterns emerged on the concrete floor, remnants of attempts to erase the evidence. While no bodies were found buried beneath the house, cadaver dogs repeatedly signaled towards the densest part of the surrounding forest. Mason's behavior took a peculiar turn. He began reporting strange happenings: whispers in the night, fresh footprints leading to his door but not away, shadowy figures observing from afar. The authorities assigned an officer to protect him, yet Mason's paranoia only deepened. A breakthrough came when buried land records surfaced in county archives, linking the house to a reclusive hunter named Victor Blackwood. Residents scarcely caught glimpses of him, describing brief encounters with an unnaturally tall, gaunt man who shunned conversation. Blackwood had vanished without a trace 15 years prior, his disappearance left uninvestigated. Detective Keller secured a warrant to expand the search into the woods. The search party stumbled upon crude hunting blinds strategically placed along popular hiking routes. Inside one, a journal was discovered, containing meticulous observations on hikers' details of their paths, gear, and routines. The handwriting in the journal matched samples from Victor Blackwood's scant documents. The entries progressed from hunting techniques for animals to chilling accounts of humans as prey, with elaborate descriptions of how he selected his victims. A manhunt for Blackwood spanned multiple jurisdictions. Helicopters equipped with thermal cameras scoured the forest, tactical teams combed through caves and crevices, yet the elusive suspect remained elusive. Mason ceased all communication. Officers dispatched to his residence found it deserted, save for a chilling message freshly etched on his bedroom wall: the hunter becomes the hunted. The search for Mason persisted for weeks to no avail. However, during a secondary sweep of Blackwood's house, a horrifying secret was unveiled. Concealed behind a false wall in the basement was a workshop filled with woodworking tools, wood preservatives, and a freshly carved piece of wood bearing a new name belonging to the lead forensic technician who had processed the house during the initial investigation. The technician had called in sick that day and remained unreachable. Authorities established a surveillance perimeter around the house. Cameras monitored every angle, motion sensors poised for any intrusion. The trap was set. 3 nights later, sensors were triggered, alerting the security team. Footage captured a figure emerging from the forest, a tall, slender silhouette moving with an eerie grace. As tactical units closed in, the cameras briefly lost sight of the figure. When visual contact was restored, the figure had vanished into thin air. To this day, the house remains under constant watch. Mason Wright and the forensic technician were never located. The investigation carries on, with new resources allocated as similar disappearances crop up in forested regions. The names carved on the wall have become a grim legend among law enforcement. Some officers dare not speak them aloud, while others steer clear of the case altogether. Local hikers now steer clear of the house, fearful that merely mentioning it might add their names to that dreadful list, the names unspoken. Story 21. They unearthed it in the attic, nestled beneath a worn-out blanket, a porcelain doll, fragile and aged, with its azure eyes painted wide, eternally staring. It was a stranger to both of them. Initially, they dismissed it as just another forgotten relic of the past. Yet that night, as they retired to bed, an unsettling presence lingered. The air grew dense, the quiet deepened. And when dawn broke, the doll had vanished from the attic. Instead, it perched ominously at the foot of their bed. Sarah and Michael, a young couple, had acquired the Victorian estate through an auction, captivated by its intricate woodwork and enigmatic allure, despite whispers of a troubled history. They were drawn to the stories woven into its very foundation, unaware that they would soon become entwined in its dark narrative. Detective Rachel Winters received the call on a crisp autumn morning. The female victim was discovered in the master bedroom, her body contorted into an unnatural pose, limbs bent at precise angles, eyes wide with terror, frozen in fear. In the hallway lay the male victim, as if in a desperate bid to escape. The scene was pristine, no forced entry, no signs of struggle, only a chilling stillness. "The arrangement is deliberate," Detective Winters murmured, her voice soft as she recorded her observations, while the crime scene photographers meticulously captured each detail. The female victim seems posed, akin to a doll plucked from its display. The investigation commenced with thorough interrogations of the neighbors. An elderly resident recalled glimpsing a shadow flit behind an upstairs window during the couple's expected absence. Another spoke of hearing childlike laughter emanating from the vacant house in the dead of night. Each testimony added another layer of disquiet to the mounting case. The forensic team uncovered minuscule fibers throughout the resident's antique cotton and silk, reminiscent of materials used for vintage doll attire. The fibers were most concentrated around the victims and the attic area. What was more disconcerting was the absence of evidence. No foreign fingerprints, no intruder DNA, no footprints in the untouched dust. "It's as though the perpetrator was never physically present," remarked the lead forensic analyst. The investigation delved into the property's history. Records unveiled a recurring pattern. 3 previous proprietors had met mysterious demises over 6 decades. Each case remained unresolved, noting peculiar incongruities. One family recounted discovering antique toys in rooms they had just tidied. Another documented hearing phantom footsteps in an empty house. Detective Winters unearthed a weathered newspaper clipping from decades past. A renowned doll maker had once resided in the home with his daughter. The child had met a suspicious end, and the father, though questioned, was never charged. Before taking his own life, he had crafted one final doll, a replica of his daughter. The inventory list from Sarah and Michael's purchase made no mention of such a doll. As Detective Winters probed deeper, a pattern emerged among the victims. Each had made alterations to the house, particularly the attic. Sarah and Michael had initiated renovations a week prior to their demise, intending to transform the attic into a workspace. A breakthrough came upon studying old photographs concealed beneath the attic floorboards. Monochrome images depicted the doll maker with his collection, featuring one doll that stood out identical to the one described in the initial reports, the one discovered by Sarah and Michael. In the photographs, the doll seemed to shift positions, almost as if it moved between snapshots taken moments apart. Infrared scans of the walls unveiled a bone-chilling revelation: faint handprints, imperceptible to the naked eye, trailing from the attic to the master bedroom, alongside a peculiar residue identified as porcelain dust mingled with unidentifiable organic matter. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Detective Winters interviewed a distant relative of the doll maker. The woman divulged family lore about the doll maker's unconventional methods, purportedly infusing his prized creations with human elements to bestow life upon them. She spoke of rituals performed to bind spirits to objects, knowledge he had gleaned from his travels. The most flawless dolls, she murmured, were never mere playthings. Following this revelation, the investigation hit a standstill. No suspects emerged, no conventional rationale aligned with the evidence. The case lingered, active yet dormant. Detective Winters requested the doll as evidence, safeguarding it in a secure cabinet at the station. The subsequent morning, officers found her office door ajar, the cabinet empty. The detective herself was discovered at her desk, bewildered but unharmed, with no recollection of the prior night. The surveillance cameras captured naught but static during those mysterious hours. The estate changed hands once more at auction, its unsettling history casting a shadow over its architectural grandeur, driving the price down. The new occupants found the attic devoid of life, save for a neatly folded, tattered blanket in the corner. The doll remained elusive, and the deaths of Sarah and Michael joined the roster of enigmatic cases occasionally whispered about in the precinct. Some claimed to catch glimpses of it in the evidence storage, though inventory audits never confirmed its presence. Detective Winters chose early retirement, citing personal motives. On her final day, she extracted a solitary item from her personal files, a photograph of the doll maker with his collection. She sealed it in an envelope labeled "Never Open" and stowed it away. The new owners reported no disturbances, opting to leave the attic undisturbed. Yet on tranquil nights, locals would speak of a faint shadow flitting behind the attic window and the soft laughter of a child echoing in the stillness. Story 22: The Mystery of the Doll House. She never enjoyed venturing up to the attic, but when a storm caused a leak in the roof, she had no other option. The attic was a realm of forgotten treasures, shrouded in dust and cobwebs. Nestled in the shadows of the farthest corner was an ancient dollhouse, intricately detailed, with its miniature furniture meticulously arranged. Yet as she gazed inside, a knot formed in her stomach. The figures within were not mere dolls, but tiny, hand-carved replicas of her own family. Each figure was meticulously placed, mirroring the exact positions of her family members downstairs, with one unsettling exception. The figure meant to be her was standing by the attic door. Rebecca Morgan cautiously trailed her finger along the dollhouse roof, sensing the indentation where the small wooden figure stood. A shiver ran down her spine, unrelated to the icy draft whispering through the attic rafters. The dollhouse had no place there. This wasn't her childhood abode, but a rented property her family had recently moved into. The enigma began with Rebecca's frantic call to the authorities. Law enforcement officers arrived at the suburban dwelling to find a family gripped by fear, gathered in the living room, reluctant to ascend the stairs. Detective Sarah Harmon, the lead investigator, initially brushed off their concerns as a prank or the vivid imagination of a family adapting to a new home. The intricate detail was what struck me, Detective Harmon later recounted. Each tiny figurine captured a unique aspect of every family member: the father's thinning hair, the teenage son's hoodie, even the faint birthmark on the mother's hand. The course of the investigation shifted when forensic teams unearthed fingerprints on the dollhouse that did not match any family member. Even more disconcerting were the microscopic cameras discreetly embedded in the eyes of each miniature figure, all linked to a sophisticated recording system concealed beneath the dollhouse itself. A scrutiny of the Morgan family's movements over the preceding days unveiled a disquieting pattern. The positions of the figures in the dollhouse not only mirrored the family's seating arrangement that fateful evening, but replicated exact poses from various days, hinting that someone had observed them long enough to learn their routines. We soon realized this was no ordinary case of stalking, Detective Harmon elucidated. The perpetrator exhibited a level of fixation rarely seen in criminal psychology literature. The inquiry led to the discovery of a concealed basement entrance behind a false wall in the pantry. Inside, investigators stumbled upon a makeshift living space, indicating that someone had been dwelling there before the Morgans' arrival. Traces of food wrappers, water bottles, and a sleeping bag suggested the presence of an intruder beneath the family's feet for weeks. The absence of forced entry puzzled investigators. Property records disclosed that the house had remained vacant for nearly a year before the Morgan family's occupancy. The previous owners, an elderly couple, had both passed away within a short span. Their son had overseen the estate sale and subsequent property rental. Interviews with neighbors yielded scant information. Most had noticed nothing amiss, except for one elderly woman who occasionally glimpsed lights in the vacant house. I assumed it was the real estate agents showing the property, she informed investigators. I never imagined someone might be residing there without authorization. A breakthrough emerged through digital forensics. Examination of the surveillance system linked to the miniature cameras unveiled that the data was being transmitted to an external server. The IP address led investigators to a modest apartment across town. Inside, the walls were adorned with photographs of the Morgan family and previous occupants of the house. Detailed journal entries meticulously chronicled the daily routines of each family member. The most chilling discovery was a workshop within the apartment containing numerous partially completed dollhouses, each representing distinct homes in the vicinity. The apartment belonged to Martin Wells, the son of the deceased homeowners. Financial records indicated mounting debts following his parents' demise. Instead of selling the house outright, he had fashioned the hidden living space, remaining there while collecting rent from unsuspecting tenants. The dollhouse served as his command center, expounded the forensic psychologist involved in the case. Each figure symbolized someone under his watchful gaze. The figure of Rebecca near the attic door wasn't a threat, it was his acknowledgement of her discovery of his surveillance system. During questioning, Wells remained eerily composed as he divulged his motives. They were residing in my home, occupying my parents' bedroom. I needed assurance they treated it with reverence. When probed about the positioned figures, he simply remarked, "I wanted them to realize I was always observing." A psychological evaluation unveiled a complex scenario of possessive delusion. Unable to cope with the loss of his childhood home, Wells devised an intricate system to assert dominance over it. The dollhouse became his tool to claim ownership of both the property and its inhabitants. The Morgan family never returned to the house. Rebecca later reflected that the most haunting moment wasn't discovering the dollhouse, but comprehending its implications. Someone had been watching us all along, measuring our lives, transforming us into mere pawns. The true terror wasn't the dollhouse itself, it was understanding that to him, we were merely puppets to be manipulated and scrutinized. Wells faced multiple charges, including stalking, invasion of privacy, illegal surveillance, and breaking and entering. The case prompted a reevaluation of real estate disclosure laws concerning deaths on properties and the duty of agents to ensure proper vacating before new occupants move in. During sentencing, the judge highlighted the egregious violation endured by the Morgan family. You didn't just intrude into their home, you invaded their sense of security and independence. You witnessed their most intimate moments and recreated them for your gratification. What unnerves criminologists most about this case is how long Wells might have remained undetected if not for Rebecca's discovery of the dollhouse. Analysis of his journals suggested that he had clandestinely resided within homes for nearly 2 years, shifting from one property to the next, crafting dollhouses of each family under surveillance. The Morgan family eventually resettled in a distant location, yet Rebecca confessed in her victim impact statement that she still checks closets and hidden corners routinely. She rid their new residents of all dollhouses and miniatures. "Some days I still sense eyes upon me," she confided. "I wonder if somewhere, someone is manipulating a tiny version of me in a dollhouse I have yet to uncover." Story 23. In the quiet anticipation of a new life, she decided to repaint the nursery, a serene ritual before the baby's arrival. The walls wore a faded blue, a color that seemed to hold whispers of bygone tales within its layers. As she carefully applied the first coat of fresh white paint, a hidden secret stirred beneath the surface, unveiling itself in a mysterious revelation. Letters emerged, faint at first, then gradually sharpening into a clear message. "Don't let it hear you." Her breath hitched in her throat, a chill creeping down her spine. Stepping back to survey her work, she noticed something unsettling: a series of tiny handprints imprinted in the wet paint, positioned too high on the wall to belong to any child. This peculiar discovery in the nursery of the Morgan residence marked the inception of what would be later dubbed the Whispering House case. The young couple had acquired the Victorian-style home at an unbelievably low price, unaware of the dark secrets that lay hidden within its walls. The real estate agent had casually mentioned minor cosmetic issues, concealing the property's ominous history. Detective Sarah Klein, notebook in hand, arrived at the door of the residence, greeted by a pregnant woman in paint-splattered overalls, her eyes shadowed by fatigue. Trembling, the woman recounted the eerie findings, the cryptic message, and the inexplicable handprints. She revealed that the previous owners had vanished abruptly, leaving under the cloak of night with only essential belongings crammed into their car. Inside the historic home, Detective Klein's footsteps echoed through the corridors, the aged floorboards bearing witness to decades of untold stories. Standing in the nursery, she scrutinized the unfinished wall, the message still ominously visible beneath the layers of abandoned paint. Beside it, 5 small handprints pressed into the fresh paint, eerily positioned at the height of an adult's shoulders. Back at the precinct, Detective Klein delved into the property's records, uncovering a disquieting pattern of frequent ownership changes. Families came and went, staying for brief periods, with unsettling child welfare reports surfacing for several of them. Children spoke of whispers emanating from the walls and unseen eyes watching them as they slept. Further investigation led the detective to the house's former owner, Alina Blackwood, a wealthy widow who had operated an orphanage on the premises during a bygone era. Tragic tales emerged from old newspapers, detailing the disappearance of 5 children under Alina's care, their fate shrouded in mystery. A sealed room hidden behind the nursery wall, discovered after Alina's passing, yielded children's belongings but no bodies. Interviews with past residents unveiled a chilling narrative of inexplicable occurrences, toys moving of their own accord, ghostly laughter reverberating through empty rooms, and cryptic messages appearing on the walls. Each account culminated in the same warning, eerily scribed beneath layers of paint. A forensic linguist linked the haunting messages to Alina's own handwriting, while the identical handprints, spanning generations, defied logical explanation. The investigation took a grim turn when ground-penetrating radar uncovered anomalies beneath the basement floor. A macabre revelation awaited below. Breaking through the concrete floor, workers unearthed the remains of 5 children, arranged in a solemn circle, their small pendants bearing engraved names that finally gave voice to the long-lost orphans. Luminol cast an eerie glow in the nursery, revealing countless handprints adorning the walls, a silent testament to the trapped souls seeking solace. Alina's journals, recovered from dusty archives, exposed her twisted motives, believing in the power of orphaned children's spirits to prolong her own existence. The closure of the case brought justice to the victims, but a lingering sense of unease pervaded the house, evoking whispers of a past that refused to fade. The nursery walls, witnesses to unspeakable tragedies, were demolished in an attempt to cleanse the tainted space. Yet echoes of children's voices persisted, haunting the workers who dared to venture near. The house, tainted by its dark legacy, stood deserted, a solemn reminder of the unexplained mysteries that lingered within its walls. Detective Klein's final report, adorned with haunting photographs and chilling testimonies, closed the chapter on the Whispering House case. Yet the essence of the past, like ghostly handprints on a freshly painted wall, continued to beckon, transcending time and mortal confines. The house, condemned and forsaken, bore witness to a truth that defied conventional understanding, an enigma that whispered through the ages, unanswered and eternal. Story 24, The Enigmatic Mirror. She swiped away the mist clinging to the mirror, her gaze fixated on the reflection staring back at her. Everything appeared normal, her face, her attire. Yet a subtle unease crept over her the longer she lingered. A flicker caught in the corner of her eye, a movement that seemed out of place. As she turned away, the reflection remained motionless, observing her. The curious case of Rebecca Thorne commenced with that unsettling moment in her bathroom. What transpired next would puzzle investigators and cast a shadow over the community for years to come. Rebecca dwelled alone in a humble apartment nestled in a serene suburban enclave. Her acquaintances depicted her as meticulous, reserved, a woman who preferred solitude but maintained a polite rapport with neighbors. By profession, she was a data analyst for a mid-sized firm, her days governed by routine and exactitude. There was nothing about her demeanor that hinted at her becoming the focal point of one of the most baffling criminal inquiries of the era. The initial signs seemed trivial. Rebecca noticed minor disruptions in her living space. Objects shifted from their usual places, not missing but rearranged. A coffee mug relocated to a different shelf, books shuffled around, her toothbrush resting on the wrong side of the sink. She brushed off these anomalies as mere lapses in memory, a consequence of prolonged hours spent under harsh fluorescent lights, staring at spreadsheets until her vision blurred. Detective Marion Shaw was informed of the first incident when Rebecca, after enduring weeks of these disturbances, finally reached out to the authorities. Initially deemed non-criminal, Shaw perceived it as a matter more suited for mental health services than law enforcement. The complaint was duly recorded but relegated to the stack of non-urgent cases. There was no tangible evidence, Shaw later recounted. No signs of forced entry, no missing possessions, just a woman plagued by a sense of unease in her own home. The pivotal moment arrived with the bathroom mirror episode. During her subsequent interaction with the police, Rebecca vividly recounted how her reflection appeared to move independently, how she felt under constant surveillance even in solitude. This time she provided proof, footage from a security camera she had installed, trained on her front door. The recording unveiled a sight that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned officers. The grainy video captured Rebecca departing for work in the morning, followed by someone identical to her using a key to enter the apartment 20 minutes later. Forensic experts scrutinized the footage for signs of tampering or digital manipulation, finding none. The individual entering the apartment mimicked Rebecca's movements, attire, even carrying her distinctive leather bag. However, Rebecca had already swiped into her office building across town, as confirmed by time-stamped footage from her workplace security system. "We're facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superiors. "Someone who has painstakingly studied Ms. Thorne and can replicate her with uncanny precision." The investigation escalated. Fingerprints discovered within the apartment matched solely with Rebecca's. No foreign DNA was unearthed. Neighbors attested to witnessing nothing out of the ordinary, just Rebecca going about her routine as usual. One neighbor, Mrs. Keller, mentioned greeting Rebecca upon her return home one evening, but receiving no response, a behavior she found unusual, yet not alarming. Rebecca commenced documenting the disturbances in a journal. Minor alterations in her living space multiplied. Food she had not consumed vanished from her refrigerator. Her computer displayed searches she had not initiated. Most disconcerting were the photographs found on her phone's selfies resembling her, though she had no recollection of capturing them. In some, her expression seemed subtly awry, the smile too wide, the gaze too intense. "I feel as though I'm descending into madness," she confided to Detective Shaw during their third meeting. "Or perhaps someone is orchestrating it to seem that way." A breakthrough emerged when investigators discerned a pattern in the security footage. The doppelganger only infiltrated when Rebecca departed for specific commitments: therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday morning grocery runs, predetermined activities with predictable durations. "Someone is intimately acquainted with your routine," Shaw elucidated. "This is not happenstance, it's calculated surveillance and infiltration." A forensic psychologist proposed they were dealing with a fixation case, an individual fixated on assuming Rebecca's identity, potentially aiming to supplant her entirely. Such occurrences were infrequent but documented in psychological archives. The perpetrator typically underwent a psychological rupture and fixated on a victim embodying traits they coveted: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. The focus of the inquiry narrowed when Rebecca mentioned a former colleague, Lily Winters, who had been terminated for displaying escalating erratic behavior. Lily had collaborated closely with Rebecca, often remarking on their shared attributes. Following her dismissal, she dispatched a series of unsettling emails to Rebecca. "We could be identical," one message read. "At times, I feel as though I am more you than you are." Detective Shaw secured a warrant to search Lily's abode. The findings within transformed the case from perplexing to chilling. One chamber in Lily's residence had been transformed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom. The walls adorned with photographs, countless images of Rebecca entering her apartment, shopping, meeting friends, all captured without her knowledge. A wardrobe contained exact replicas of Rebecca's attire. Makeup mirroring Rebecca's preferred brands rested on a vanity, accompanied by meticulous notes on her mannerisms, speech patterns, and daily routines. The most incriminating evidence surfaced in the form of practice videos. Lily had filmed herself mimicking Rebecca's gait, gestures, expressions. The evolution was evident, initial attempts awkward and evident, later endeavors nearly indistinguishable from the genuine Rebecca. "She aspired to become me," Rebecca whispered upon viewing the evidence. "She wasn't merely copying me, she was eradicating me." Forensic specialists uncovered sophisticated apparatus for forging key duplicates and replicating electronic access cards. Lily had maintained an intricate system for tracking Rebecca's movements, inclusive of a calendar with precise forecasts of her agenda. What eluded investigators was Lily's ultimate objective. Journals discovered in her residence contained rambling entries that fluctuated between first and third person, occasionally referring to Rebecca as me and her in the same paragraph. The final entry sent chills down the spines of the investigators. "Soon, only one of us will prevail. The stronger version shall endure." Upon authorities moving to apprehend Lily, she had vanished. Her abode bore signs of a hurried departure, drawers left ajar, certain technology missing. A nationwide alert was issued. Rebecca was relocated to a secure location under protective custody, surveilled incessantly. For 3 weeks, every location linked to her previous life was monitored by authorities. Lily remained elusive. The case took a disquieting turn when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly. Rebecca had been sighted entering the building despite being on leave. Security footage corroborated the account. An individual identical to Rebecca had accessed the building using a valid ID card, proceeded to her former workstation, and spent 40 minutes perusing her files before departing. Meanwhile, the real Rebecca, safeguarded in a fortified safe house, could not have been present at the office. The implications became evident. Lily had not fled, she had executed her plan. She now assumed Rebecca's identity, stepping into her existence as the genuine Rebecca remained concealed. The case remains officially unresolved. Lily Winters remains at large. Rebecca Thorne refrained from resuming her former life, opting to forge a new identity in an undisclosed location. Detective Shaw retains a photograph on her desk, 2 women bearing a striking resemblance. One is Rebecca Thorne, the other is Lily Winters. At times, she scrutinizes their countenances, seeking the disparities, the nuances that would set one apart from the other. The truly unnerving aspect Shaw imparts to new detectives within the force is not that someone could resemble you or sound like you. It's the fervor with which they aspire to be you, to the extent of erasing themselves in the process. Identity transcends mere appearance. It is our most closely guarded possession. And sometimes its value is only truly comprehended when someone endeavors to pilfer it. Story 25. The aged envelope sat on Detective Sarah Morgan's desk, its yellowed edges a stark contrast to the fresh stamp that adorned it. a stamp that had been marked just days prior. With a sense of intrigue, she carefully tore it open, revealing a single sheet of paper within. The message on it was typed hastily, the words uneven and rushed. "I am sorry for what I did." A faint dampness clung to the paper, carrying with it a distinct scent of iron. And as Morgan examined it further, her eyes caught sight of a reddish smear along the bottom edge, a stain that was not made by any ordinary ink. Swiftly she placed the letter into an evidence bag, her gloved hands moving with practiced precision. The forensics team had already confirmed her suspicions. The reddish mark was indeed human blood, and it matched the DNA from an unsolved homicide that had haunted their department for years. The victim, Rebecca Warren, a young journalist, had been found in her apartment with multiple stab wounds, her laptop missing, her notes scattered. It was clear that her death was tied to a story she was investigating. The arrival of this mysterious letter, addressed simply to Homicide Division, breathed new life into the cold case. Few fingerprints adorned the paper and envelope, only faint smudges hinting that the sender had taken precautions. The postmark, however, offered a glimmer of hope, a thread to follow in the darkness that had shrouded the investigation for so long. Gathering her team in the dimly lit briefing room, Morgan pinned the image of the letter at the center of the board, a focal point in their quest for answers. "This changes everything," she announced to the room, her voice low and steady. "Our killer shows signs of remorse." Detective James Chen, her longtime partner in this relentless pursuit of justice, studied the letter intently. "Or perhaps it's a facade," he suggested, "a twisted form of taunting us, a macabre game they play." The forensics team delved into the unique impression patterns left by the typewriter, a model long out of production. Rare, but not impossible to locate, they cast their net wide, reaching out to antique shops and collectors across the region, hoping to trace the origins of this chilling correspondence. As the investigation gained momentum, they delved deeper into Rebecca's life, uncovering the threads that connected her to a wealthy family embroiled in a bitter inheritance dispute. Her editor spoke of her dedication to uncovering truths, her relentless pursuit of justice in a world tainted by corruption. Interviews with Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, unveiled subtle shifts in his demeanor, his once solid alibi now tinged with uncertainty. She feared she was being followed, he confessed, the weight of regret evident in his voice. "I should have taken her warnings more seriously." Just as they delved into this new light, a second letter arrived, bearing the same typewritten message, the same chilling presence of blood. This time the words painted a clearer picture. She delved too deep into the family secrets, into the darkness surrounding the patriarch's demise. "It was never my intention for things to spiral out of control." Their pursuit led them to the grand mansion of the deceased patriarch, where they confronted his eldest son, Richard. A collection of vintage typewriters adorned his study, a fact that raised suspicions. His explanations felt rehearsed, his demeanor too polished, too calculated. The breakthrough came when microscopic fibers on the envelopes pointed to custom stationery used exclusively by the family's youngest daughter, Eleanor. Questioned under the weight of suspicion, she revealed Richard's request for her stationery, a request that now seemed far more sinister in the harsh light of truth. A search of Richard's home unearthed a hidden chamber, a dark sanctuary filled with damning evidence, newspaper clippings about Rebecca, surveillance photos, and the vintage typewriter that had penned the ominous letters. The blood analysis sealed the connection, linking the letters to Rebecca's tragic end. But the final revelation came in the form of a recording, a damning piece of evidence that Alina produced. In hushed tones, Richard and Michael discussed the fate of Rebecca, their words painting a chilling portrait of betrayal and deceit. "She must be silenced for good," Richard's voice echoed in the dim room, a voice devoid of remorse. With the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place, Michael's confession shattered the facade of innocence. "I told Richard what she had uncovered about the poisoning," he admitted, the weight of guilt heavy on his shoulders. "I never imagined he would go to such lengths." As the trial unfolded, Richard clung to his denial, his claims of innocence ringing hollow in the face of overwhelming evidence. The jury's verdict came swiftly, a resounding declaration of guilt that echoed through the courtroom. Detective Morgan, standing by Rebecca's grieving parents, offered a silent nod, a gesture of solidarity in the shadow of loss. The blood-stained letters, now stored away in evidence, served as a stark reminder that even the most meticulously planned crimes leave traces, breadcrumbs that lead back to the truth. The case of Rebecca Warren became a cautionary tale, a lesson in the power of guilt and the unraveling of even the most carefully woven deception. And in the quiet of the night, as the world drifted into slumber, the echoes of justice whispered softly, a lullaby of closure in the darkness. Story 26: The Enigmatic Manor. The new homeowners perceived the crackling old intercom system as a peculiar quirk of their Victorian manor, a remnant of the past, now forgotten but once rewired. Late one night, curiosity led the husband to press the button, and through the speaker came a whisper. "Why did you come back?" Startled, he recoiled, hands trembling. His wife, standing behind him, denied ever uttering those words. Nestled amidst ancient oak trees, the manor's exterior, weathered by time, concealed a modernized interior. Daniel and Meredith Parker, drawn to its historical charm, had acquired the property at an unexpectedly reasonable price, despite the real estate agent's uneasy demeanor during the walkthrough. The vintage intercom system, linking all rooms, had been a selling point for the couple who cherished history. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the property, the gravel crunching beneath the tires of her unmarked vehicle. Initially reported as a potential break-in, the dispatcher's tone hinted at a deeper narrative. Daniel Parker, his pallor evident in the dim porch light, met her at the door. "It began with the intercom," he explained, leading Detective Reeves through the grand foyer. "Static at first, then whispers, then full sentences. My wife thought I was imagining it until she heard it too." In the living room, Meredith sat rigid on an antique sofa, hands tightly gripping an untouched steaming mug. "We found something behind the wall," she disclosed abruptly. Daniel wanted to expand the kitchen pantry, and when he removed the drywall, her voice faltered. Hidden behind the wall, wrapped in deteriorating plastic, was a small leather-bound journal. Detective Reeves, wearing gloves, delicately turned its brittle pages. The elegant yet frantic handwriting belonged to Alina, the previous owner. Her entries revealed suspicions of her husband Vincent planning harm against her. The final entry, dated 30 years prior, marked the abrupt end of Alina's journal. The previous owners had bought the house from an elderly man who later moved to a retirement community. Digging deeper, the investigation unveiled the dark truth of Vincent and Alina Blackwood, former owners of the house. Vincent had sold the property shortly after Alina's disappearance, without any record of divorce or change of address for her. Forensic analysis of human remains unearthed beneath the garden shed's concrete foundation confirmed a woman in her 40s, bearing signs of blunt force trauma to the skull. A gold wedding band inscribed to Alina, "My eternal love," was found among the remains. The evidence against Vincent Blackwood, now elderly and residing in a care facility, grew stronger. In a chilling confession, Vincent admitted to silencing a leaner who incessantly communicated through the intercom. He had meticulously fabricated a narrative of her departure, living in a house with her buried beneath the concrete. His deception spanned decades, fooling even the closest of neighbors with forged postcards. Vincent pleaded guilty to murder, acknowledging the calculated nature of his crime and the years of deceit. Daniel and Meredith, unable to bear the house's dark past, sold the property after a memorial service for a leaner in the restored garden. The intercom system, removed by subsequent owners during renovations, emitted static and whispers during the process, attributed to electrical interference. Detective Reeves revisited the Blackwood case file before its archival, pondering how the house had unveiled its secret across time. The justice system had finally caught up with Vincent Blackwood thanks to a leaner's enduring voice. Known locally as the house that answered back, the manor stood as a silent witness to its own enigmatic history. Detective Reeves, passing by the property on her way home, would slow down, listening for whispers carried on the wind, never forgetting the mysteries that resided within. Story 27, The Hushed Whispers. In the stillness of the night, a faint flicker danced across the baby monitor's screen, like a secret trying to break free. The mother, nestled in the comfort of her bed, brushed it off as a mere glitch, a hiccup in the technology. But then the silence crackled, and a voice, soft as a breath, whispered, "SHHH, go back to sleep." A shiver crept down her spine, her heartbeat quickening in the darkness. With a racing heart, she dashed to her son's room, fear clutching at her chest. But as she flung open the door, the crib lay empty, untouched by tiny hands. The window stood closed, the lock secure. All that remained was a lone stuffed rabbit, abandoned on the floor, its glassy eyes fixed on her, unblinking in the dim light. Rebecca's scream pierced the night, a raw cry of anguish that tore through the silence. The neighbors, stirred from their slumber by her distress, dialed for help. Emergency services arrived to find her cradling the rabbit, lost in a world of disbelief and sorrow, the nursery floor a sea of unanswered questions. The mystery deepened as investigators combed through the shadows of the vanished child's room. No signs of forced entry marred the peaceful facade of the home. The security system stood vigilant, its watch unbroken. The baby monitor footage, a chilling witness to the night's events, revealed only the enigmatic voice and static that had shattered their peace. Suspicions turned inward, casting shadows on Rebecca. Her husband, Daniel, absent on business, loomed like a specter in the background of their fractured lives. Strained by the weight of parenthood, their bond strained to the breaking point. Medical records whispered of Rebecca's battle with postpartum shadows, a darkness she fought in silence. Whispers echoed through the community, painting Rebecca as the tragic figure in a macabre play. But fate had other plans. A clue, woven in delicate fibers on the nursery windowsill, hinted at a different truth. A rare rope, a phantom thread, suggested a skilled intruder had danced on the edge of their world, slipping in and out like a ghost in the night. The focus shifted, revealing a new player in this twisted game. Daniel, returning from his journey, bore the weight of guilt in the calluses on his hands, a secret etched in the lines of his pastime rock climbing, a mask for the shadows that lurked beneath his facade. A web of lies unraveled, exposing a tangled tapestry of deceit. Financial records whispered of a darker truth, a life insurance policy that cast a shadow over Samuel's fate. An unknown number, a silent accomplice, danced on the edges of suspicion. And then, the revelation, a second family, hidden in the shadows, a betrayal that cut deeper than any blade. As the threads of deception unraveled, the baby monitor emerged as the silent witness to their unraveling world. hacked, manipulated its voice a pawn in a game of shadows. The path led to a basement, a chamber of secrets, where Samuel lay cradled in the arms of a woman named Elaine, a ghost from Daniel's past, a specter haunting their lives. The truth, a shard of glass in the shattered mirror of their existence, cut deep. Daniel's denial crumbled under the weight of evidence, his climbing gear a silent accomplice to his crimes. The trial, a theater of shadows, played out to a silent audience, the echoes of whispered voices haunting the halls of justice. In the end, justice prevailed, a beacon in the darkness. Daniel and Elaine, shackled by their sins, faced the consequences of their actions. Rebecca, bearing the scars of a night she could never forget, sought solace in a new dawn, a fresh start away from the shadows that haunted her past. And Samuel, innocent of the horrors that shaped his infancy, would grow up in the light of a new day, his mother's love a shield against the darkness that once threatened to consume them. The stuffed rabbit, a silent sentinel in the corner of her closet, bore witness to their shared pain, a reminder of the night when whispers carried the truth through the veil of night. The baby monitor, a silent guardian, remained vigilant in its watch, a sentinel against the shadows that lingered at the edges of their lives. In its digital gaze, the truth lay bare, a whispered secret that bound them together in a tapestry of fate, woven in the threads of a night they could never forget.